hot as hell today, folks. Hot as hell. Got back from the gym a little bit ago. It's a must. Crank that music, Laura. Let's go. All right. Let's get this party started, shall we? All right. Welcome to What Are the Odds with Barnes and Baris. What's going on, Robert? How you feeling, brother? How you feeling?
Good. The definitely eventful weekend, and the nature of Trump world is I don't think a week passes without some sort of unique drama.
I mean, it's hard to plot a show around this guy. Like, I don't think people honestly understand that. It's hard to get something together on a weekend, especially for ready for Monday, if you want to do a show. The Sunday shows do their rounds and they make a stink, and it's something they're talking about there. There's riots going on in LA right now, which we have to obviously talk about. And I'm polling this last night, and it just so happens I'm in the field, and Trump's approval shoots up like 5 points and his disapproval collapses. And I'm going to show everybody that in a bit. But I mean, this guy is like covering no other person, Robert. I mean, when he's gone, we're going to be so bored. I mean, I hope, if it's Vance, which I think it's going to be at this moment, I don't know who else it could be. If it's Vance, I hope he keeps us this entertained, because this is a roller coaster, right?
Yeah, I mean, no doubt about it. I mean, I think what we've seen is the Trump continue to survive no matter what the onslaught is. But I have been surprised that the left took the bait on celebrating illegals. I mean, like, if we were scripting this out, you're like, what do you want? Let's say you want the world to be red-pilled about the dangers of the judicial branch. You want the world to be red-pilled about legislative corruption. You want the world to be red-pilled about bureaucratic intransigence. You want the world to be red-pilled about the Democratic Party. Trump couldn't have scripted it any better. I mean, you have a Democratic Party demanding more war in Ukraine. You have a Democratic Party siding with terror groups around the world, like Hamas and others. You have the Democratic Party making their face of their operation. I mean, that photo, yes. I mean, we live in an incredibly telegenic age, but that photograph yesterday of that guy with his mask, probably one of those Mexican wrestling mask kind of deals, but mask, waving the Mexican flag on the motorcycle in front of all the cop cars, and the smoke pouring up behind it from all the fires. Because now that's what you do if you're homeless in LA now. You see a riot and you go join in by just setting a fire someplace. I was watching Geeks and Gamers, D-Day Cobra. He got massive coverage just broadcasting it live, just covering the LA riots throughout the week, because he had all these ordinary people doing their own feeds. You didn't have the institutional media now can no longer shut down these kind of stories like they used to by saying, "Oh, everything's fine here." I was still startled. The mayor's always been a commie, but the mayor new scum. That's not a bad nickname by Trump for Newsom. But I mean, you would have thought they would have had higher political IQ than let's recreate the summer of love of 2020. I think Mark Robert was calling them Lantifa, so it's like a Latino version of Antifa. So Lantifa, you got all that. But I mean, it's like this was never popular for the Democratic Party, but at least George Floyd had the impression of a popular cause.
Yeah.
Illegals with long rap sheets do not have popular cause with anybody outside the hardcore left of this country. And you've got them saying right there on the air saying ICE shouldn't be in LA. Is LA still part of the United States? Or some of us that think not. Maybe Goldwater was right. Remember, Goldwater was the LBJ did the commercial where he was gonna saw off the East Coast.
Saw off the.
We should go right where the Central Valley is. and right, all the coastal counties, all the way up to Seattle. Just slice them right off, send them to China, where they belong. But I mean, this is just politically, Democrats are imploding. The only question is, can Republicans take advantage of it?
And
Trump
they
clearly can.
capitalize.
Yeah.
Yes. I want to show people. I'm gonna show people. This is for Sunday, and I have to be kind of careful because I don't want to blow it. And plus, I had to ask if I could do this, which I can. But first of all, before I show that, I mean, I think some of it is cluelessness. This guy is just a straight up tool. So, like, I mean, I wouldn't take I wouldn't take what he says as some indication of strategy, but I do think that there is some level of disconnected or what tone deafness that, if you listen to the media, and I think you made a good point before, like the era of kids in cages is over, because I was talking about this with another pollster. He actually tweeted about our conversation. And basically all of these pollsters are erratic. They're full of crap. They're all these negative Trumps. We know they are. The truth is the country went hard to Trump after the election during a honeymoon phase, and then it resettled right back roughly where it was before the election. We returned, and we have been seeing these maybe negative ones here and there, but for the most part, Trump +1, Trump +2 with approvals after a huge spike in Trump's approval rating. I mean, I had a high of Trump approved +18, which is insane. That's insane. And now I'm going to show people what happened last night, which I just think is huge, because I think the point you made is right. In the first administration, they were able to do the kids in cages, and it didn't matter. They were lying that the photo was Obama's tenure, right? I mean, it got through, and it hurt Trump. And there's a clip from Harry Enton I'm going to play in a sec. I will play at some point. But, I think this is indicative of some of these fools. They're just total clueless morons, like Anthony Scaramucci, who is somebody who's been exiled from Trump world. He's one of these guys who thought supporting Donald Trump would pay off for him big time. They got scared like little cowards when the law came for them, and they ran for the hills, and they all cut deals to save their own asses. I don't know what you would expect, and not that they did anything wrong. Maybe they did in their own personal life, and a Mueller or an Andrew Weissman found something and they used it to twist their arm, like they did with Michael Cohen. His wife was him and his wife were crooks, and they were lying to the bank about the medallion cab company, and they threatened to throw her in jail for 30 years, and that's why Michael Cohen flipped his script. All right. Plus, he was bitter. He thought he would be chief of staff. I mean, so there's all of these examples, and Anthony Scaramucci is another one. They feel like they didn't cash in, and they weren't protected sufficiently, as if anyone ever promised that to them. Robert, if you start a revolution, a political revolution, you better have the courage and the backbone to understand, to stick with it, because you better at least understand they're coming for you, So this was a bunch of grifters in the beginning, and many are still there, but a bunch of grifters who decided, I'm going to try to cash in on this. He's one of them. That's all. Look at this guy's take. This whole fiasco could make Gavin president. That is the exact opposite take of what's going to happen here. He is completely unelectable right now. It's just on a national level, in a national election, it may increase or buff up. And that's what I actually wrote in response to it. I could show people, but I'll just say it. It may shore up his left-wing bona fides, because he took a moderate turn trying to survive in the Trump era, but it's not, and it may even help him in a few primaries, brother, but it's not going to make him president. He's doomed as of right now. It's over for him. There will not be some dramatic turnaround, because even law-abiding Hispanics in his own state absolutely cannot stand this nonsense. And it's more than nonsense. They hate it. They think they should be deported. The polls, even the liberal polls, show that. And California, his own damn state, is among the top few states that swung the hardest to Donald Trump, and not the last one, but last two elections. The other state, folks, is New Jersey. Okay, so these are blue states that they are losing ridiculous numbers with, Robert, because of this kind of thing. Before I show the numbers, what is your...
Well, yeah, it's a complete... If I wanted to caricature the left, I would say that they want, Maryland man to be their representative. Someone who's a decades-long criminal, order of removal more than 5 years old. someone that comes from criminal gang operations and was a murderer and criminal from where he came to the United States to continue that criminality, not only with connections with MS-13, one of the most dangerous gangs in the world, until TDA and others showed up. They were the worst. And while he is here in the United States, engages in human trafficking, including human trafficking of women and minors, has CP on his computer file. So that gives you an idea of what he does in his spare time. Has domestic violence rap sheets with his girlfriends and wives. Gets pulled over and gets to dodge justice in Tennessee during the Biden reign, when Biden was not enforcing the laws to anybody. Yeah. And this is the guy they make their symbol. And then he, like an idiot, hires some commie lawyers who get him indicted, and now he's going to serve 20 years in federal prison when he could be hanging out in Guatemala someplace at the moment. But they thought they were grandstanding, and thought they were going to deliver. Maybe there was some of the worst act of legal malpractice. And you got federal judges making these guys the face of their cases, where they're establishing lunatic precedents that have no precedent, claiming that the federal courts can override the president of the United States on issues of immigration. The only process someone illegally here is due is deportation. Supreme Court has been saying that for a century and a half. Why? Yep. Because deportation is not punishment, number one, when you're illegally present here. Number two, you don't get to break into somebody's house and then get to hang out there for 6 months, and they have to feed you and take care of you while we decide whether or not you should have broken into their house. That's not how that works. If someone accuses you of breaking into the house and you didn't, in other words, you're a U.S. citizen who's being falsely accused, then you have all the due process in the world, because you're legally entitled to be here. But you have to allege plausibly that you're legally entitled to be here for due process to apply. Yet these courts are ignoring this because they don't care. We've been talking about how power mad the Democratic professional managerial class is as a class. Everywhere they go, they try to see. They go to Hollywood, they want to control all the scripts. They get into the gaming world, they want to control all the game narratives. Yep. They get into the comics world, they want to control every single comic. They got to retcon every single one. Star Wars has to be woke. Doctor Who has to be woke. Star Trek.
Wheel of Time. They killed all of it. Time. They killed Witcher. They killed all of these great book series that could have just been huge successes on their own, but because they have to be nutcase and woke. The Wheel of Time, folks, in case you haven't seen it, Wheel of Time is about how men and women are different by nature, and that they actually have to learn that they are different by nature. And women tried to dominate men because the power made the men mad, but it's a different kind of power. In the show, they made it all the one power, and women were some kind of superiority complex, and it was lesbian scene after lesbian scene. It failed because people who love the books were like, this is not what this is about at all. In fact, this is the opposite. They tried to create something else. What happened? It's done. The show's done. So I hope you didn't waste 3 seasons of your life on Wheel of Time, or 2 seasons of your life on The Witcher, which is the greatest game ever created in the history of gaming in the universe. I am not a gamer, but I love me some Witcher 3, Robert. The DLC expansion pack, Heart of Stone, Blood and Wine, the best game ever made. Hands down. I love Geralt. I love the character. The books are awesome, and they killed it. Imagine if they did that to Game of Thrones. I mean, I know, it came close a couple of times.
At the end, they did, but only because they couldn't write. Wokeism hadn't taken over yet. But now it's just taken over whole in mass. They make they kind of did at the end, but they'd make the little fella and the disabled person the heroes, instead of normal heroes. And so all of it, they're totalitarians. They don't allow a single outlet that opposes or questions their viewpoints. And what happens when you create a totalitarian world and you yourselves live in bubbles where you become you believe everything Zelensky says, right, about Ukraine. And then it's, here's Russia says, here's the 6,000 dead that you left behind in Kursk. Let's have them for your family. In Ukraine that pretended they haven't lost anybody in the war, pretend that Kursk was a big success, that owed now a bunch of families money because they've been telling the families, they're just missing. They're not dead. They're just missing. And then here's the bodies line up. And they're like, we refuse to take them. No, can't do that.
Because it proved they're liars.
Exactly. That's complete frauds.
Yeah.
And that's what's going on in all the immigration context. The courts have made the mistake. The bureaucrats have made the mistake. The media has made the mistake. But more than anybody, the Democratic Party has made the mistake of making their grand stand, not, as you point out, a little kid in a cage, but for the kind of people who belong in cages because they've been spent their lives as hardcore criminals. Those are the ones that Trump wisely targeted out of the gate. Let's get the people with removal orders.
Yep.
Let's get the people with criminal convictions. Let's get the hardcore guys. Let's make that the focal point. I know they're going to resist en masse, but when they do, the whole world is going to be against them. And so it doesn't surprise me at all that you're seeing a boost for Trump over the weekend because the American people didn't like BLM and the Summer of Love when it happened. Their taste for it soured over time. And now you're out there not for a fake martyr, but instead you're out there for the worst criminals in the world. And the way you're doing it is setting things on fire. The way you're doing it is violently assaulting officers. The way you're doing it is wearing Mexican masks and flying foreign flags. I mean, if the Supreme Court is going to decide this week whether or not Trump can invoke the AEA involving a predatory incursion, how are they going to say that Trump has no authority under the Alien Enemies Act? Watching what happened this weekend. How are they going to say nationwide injunctions are a good idea when they helped produce this insanity in the inception? And then, so I think politically, the only thing that Trump's team needs, he needs the DOJ to use this as an opportunity to go after the Democratic funders, the big NGOs, some of the big congressmen and politicians who greenlit this, who gave out the political permission slip for it. That's been building and building and building. Jeffrey saying you can dox them. Other congressmen breaking into facilities in New Jersey, including a mayor and a member of Congress. James Comey saying you can 86-47. That when you have those kind of public statements out there, and then it leads to this kind of riotous behavior where people think they can take over the city of LA and exclude the federal government from LA, like the Mexican drug cartels do in parts of Mexico, when they, accidentally tried to arrest one of Guzman's kids. And what happened? They had to retreat because the local cartel is more powerful than the entire Mexican police and military is. They kidnapped women and children. They're using the similar tactics that they've been doing throughout Central and South America, gangs to completely control power. But they're doing so with the help and the wink and the nod of Mayor Bass, of Governor Newsom, of
absolutely
these other people. So we need consequences for those people. We need some high-profile people, whether it's a congressman, a mayor, a senator, a NGO leader like a George Soros, or some high-ranking people in the Catholic charity operation. That the Pope chose the wrong sign to tell the world he's for open borders. It's your Catholic charities, Pope, that are facilitating mass criminality. Imagine if we put put it this way. If I was over the Justice Department, I might put the Pope under criminal investigation. That would send a message to the whole world. No more of this garbage. You do not get to overthrow the American people, American Republic, constitutional republic, because of your commitment to open borders, whether you're named the George Soros or you're the Pope of the Catholic Church.
This is what bothers me, and I'll play this clip. Just remember some of the stuff we're going to play here, folks. These are garbage polls that absolutely screwed up the election. And in a little bit, I will show you what the real numbers are from a pollster here who did not. Just keep that in mind, because when you hear these margins, understand this is them not even able to do better than this. Okay, this is how bad it is. So when you see the CBS News poll, when you see CNN talking about it, when you see Harry Enton talking about it, right? I got 2 clips actually. We'll see if we get to both. But just remember, these are the trashiest polls on planet Earth that cannot spin this for Democrats any better than this. All right, but I think, Robert, you nailed it, and this is the point I was going to bring up. So when we're showing people all these polling numbers, just know this: this is the biggest problem we have in the United States right now, from the judiciary, these fanatics in black robes, on down to mayors of Los Angeles and elsewhere. We have a ruling class in this country who does not accept when they lose an election and the sovereign voter speaks. They fabricated the Russia collusion hoax to stop the will of the sovereign voter before. They get 4 years after, let's be real, let's just call it what it is, after they installed a senile, retarded president, and I don't mean that derogatory, I mean that as he is, right? By the way, with cancer, which most people think, most doctors I speak to say he had to have had cancer before he ran for 2020, right? I mean, you don't just get this kind of cancer that quickly in that advanced of a stage. They almost certainly knew when he was running the first time. But that was what they wanted, Robert. They wanted a dying man who's senile and completely out of his mind to just be an empty suit, a meat suit, folks, so that they could run the country the way that they wanted. So they install this guy. They wreck everything for 4 years, point where the country says, give me back the guy you have under 91 felony counts right now, because we know what you did. We've wised up. It's been, we were fooled at first, but now we know. We want the guy back that we hired the first time for the problems that you still won't address, and immigration is a huge one. He made immigration, and I mean draconian policy, the centerpiece of both of his campaigns, and yet California moved hard right to him. You know, I mean, they will not acknowledge that the voter is the sovereign in this country, and we cannot continue like this. We just can't. Nobody voted to be invaded. No, California was a red state until they basically allowed, and Republicans are to blame for this too. They're coward little shits who do nothing for 30 years. California was invaded. That's how it became blue. They never convinced anybody that they were right and Republican policy was wrong. Reagan was wrong. Nixon was wrong. These are two presidents, Republican presidents, that overwhelmingly carried that state. Reagan was the governor of California. They instead decided they couldn't convince you and they couldn't trust you, so they tried to replace you and breed you out. It's evil as hell when you say it out loud. Just say it out loud, because that's what they did. And yet, here we go, just not even a year ago, we have an election. He wins, and he wins easily on a policy of mass deportation. And yet, they are doing everything in their power to stop him from carrying out a policy that he was almost certainly one of the top issues he was elected to carry out. Americans want their sovereignty back. Nobody voted for an invasion to dilute that sovereignty and dilute what it means for them to be a U.S. citizen. And now we're back here. Let me just play this crap. And this is Enton and Trump's approval on immigration. But then I want to play one of the mayor. Actually, let's play the one of the mayor first, where they throw one of these polls in her face, all right? Which is funny because the numbers are worse than this. They are actually way worse than this, which I am so sick and tired of people saying, you don't know, you haven't seen those polls. Did you see the leaked Kamala Harris, Joe Biden polling that completely vindicated that I saw those polls? I know they were handed polling yesterday that said this has gotten very bad. And then on Sunday afternoon, when I came home from church, I opened the survey, Robert. I look at it and I'm like, holy moly, because things changed like that. But let's play this crap first, and then I'll show you those numbers.
Democrats out of touch on this issue?
Well, I think if you did the polling in Los Angeles, I'm not sure it would be that way, considering we are a city of immigrants. And then people might approve that policy, but do people really approve the federal government coming in and seizing power from a state and from a city?
Yes.
So I drill down.
The mayor's a commie.
Absolutely.
Fact, they would be for locking her up.
Yes.
This is the same mayor that let the city burn while she went on one of her commie vacations. I mean, you couldn't have had, if you're Trump, you couldn't have a better foil than her, right? You got a commie, incompetent mayor of a city that's totally disconnected from political reality, that thinks the city, I guarantee you, most of the Mexican Americans in East LA hate these guys that are out here doing this. It's part of the reasons why they're there rather than in Mexico, is to get away from drug cartels running the world.
That's right.
And they hate being represented with Mexican soccer flag, Mexican soccer names and teams and Mexican flags with this kind of activity. They're the number one group that has swung to Trump since 2016 are Mexican Americans. That's not a coincidence. I mean, a majority of Mexican American men voted Republican for the first time in the history of this country.
Ever.
Exactly. They align more with the National Guard and the police officer out there than they align with these crazy cartel protesters who are either drug sponsored or NGO sponsored. Right? It's drug cartels paying them to be out there.
That's right.
And some of those guys are just criminals that, hey, why not? Let's hop on. Let's see what happens. Or the same. That's when they interview cartel leaders, and they're usually surprised. These like cartel guys. What do you think of Trump's policy? And they're like, well, it kind of makes sense from his perspective. I mean, they understand business, right? This is not. They are so infatuated with the 1960s. They don't realize what happened to the left at the end of the 1960s. They destroyed cities. They destroyed their credibility. They became radical terrorists and embracing radical terrorism with Weather Underground and the rest. And they brought in 20 years of conservative Republican retaliation for what they did. They were on the verge of the end of history in 1964. Big Democratic sweep. It was going to be Democratic Party forever. You could find all kinds of scholastic articles on this, that it was all locked in. And within 4 years, I mean, now Kevin Phillips, to his great credit, was at the time, 1965, saying, no, if you look under the hood, the entire Democratic foundation is cracked and is about to fall apart. And there's an opportunity for a Republican populist majority for an entire generation. He was one of the only people predicting that, and he was right. And by, from 1968 to 1992, we had a quarter century of conservative rule relatively in this country. Well, I mean, Gerald Ford was a conservative Democrat, at least when he got elected from Georgia. Same with even Bill Clinton. Bill Clinton campaigned, portrayed himself, and ultimately, at least in part, governed as a more conservative Democrat. Go back and listen to what Bill Clinton had to say about gay marriage in the mid-1990s.
Oh, my God.
Listen to what he said about illegal immigration when he went on a huge anti-immigration rant. You can find Chuck Schumer doing this.
Harry Reid.
Exactly. None of this is, if I was a Democrat, I would be saying, dear God, stop this now. This is horrible for us. But their Bass is bragging about it, and you can tell she sincerely thinks this is deeply popular with the country and doesn't realize, clearly the country wouldn't support the federal government. Like they thought this authoritarian rap would work. Oh, Donald Trump is such an authoritarian tyrant. Look, he's sending in the National Guard. Because you're lighting the city on fire, you lunatics. Because you're trying to stop basic enforcement of immigration law to protect gangbangers, drug dealers, rapists, murderers, and kiddie porn people. I mean, you couldn't. I mean, you would have thought they got the message after Maryland Man, right? They did that whole thing, went down, did the little margaritas. I got the El Salvadoran president. Yeah, exactly. There he is, Mr. Maryland. Yeah, he's got a couple beat up. And all and unfortunately, who knows where that guy's hands would be vis-a-vis kids, given what they found on his files. I mean, you couldn't have picked a literal worst person to do this. I mean, if I was on the conspiratorial side, I would think that Trump somehow this was all 5D chess and super plan. I mean, like Trump sitting around. Somebody's got a meme, by the way, of you doing Trump's "I Love Mexicans" thing. Baris for Senate, North Carolina, with a big Taco Bell. Baris loves Hispanics.
I gotta see that.
I'm getting sent all these great memes of different Baris for Senate ones.
I could do it, brother. I could do it.
Exactly. I mean, this is an 80-20 issue at this point. I mean, there's the number of people. There's 20% or less that are on the side of what LA is doing. It's just the hardcore activist left and the knee-jerk obsessive Trump haters. Beyond that tiny world, everyone else is done with this. They've been done with illegal immigration at this scale now for a decade. They've really been done with it for the last 5 years. That's why you have majority of people, for the first time in America, supporting the deportation of everybody. Everybody.
That's what they're about to throw that in her face right now. Which after that, though, guys, I'm gonna show you his approval. Which my argument is this, Robert. I didn't ask this because this poll started before this all got out of hand. All right. And you're in the field, you're doing a rolling average, you know what I mean? And I got to get it in. I got to get it in at some point. But like this, it wasn't the time yet over the weekend because we still have people participating in that interview, that version of that interview. So it wasn't time yet. I could start to do it now. But my point is, you would not see his disapproval collapse the way I'm about to show you it collapsed. You wouldn't see that if people weren't way more. It's 80-20. It's 80-20. We're too partisan of a country to see a president's approval collapse 10 points in like 24 hours. That doesn't happen anymore. It's something like this is the people who began to like go back to their partisan leanings after the honeymoon period. Those people just broke for it when they saw this. And there's got to be a huge impact from X and other social media companies being what people are digesting now. They're not watching these programs the way that they did even 5 years ago. They're just not doing it. We know that from ratings, but even those who do, I think it's twofold. They're not watching them like that. And then those who even do are not lending them the same courtesy, like, we know you're credible. They're not giving them that benefit of the doubt anymore. They're constantly watching them with the stink eye, and they're not buying it. And then now Wolf Blitzer and just going to throw this in her face right now. And listen to how she responds.
Further on that poll, because I do not believe that Americans support the federal intervention in a city takeover. Or
she just doesn't believe it.
Yeah.
I mean, actually, I guess it was in the beginning of the clip, but she just doesn't believe it. And if that was true, then we wouldn't see what we saw, which I'm going to show you.
Not at all.
Yeah,
this is why they elected him, and they're done with it. In Europe, they still don't understand this, and in the U.S. and Canada to a certain degree, they still don't. Is that the open borders era is over? It is politically DOA. It is politically cancerous to be near it. And this is especially true in the United States, but not alone to it. That's why the Reform Party may completely replace the Tories in the UK. The Tories may disappear from the politically entirely. People forget that happens like once a century or so. A major political party in these Western democracies will just vanish and be replaced. It's happened multiple times in the UK itself, but still startling to witness in live time. Happened so fast. Reform right now would replace entirely the Tories. Not only that, Reform would have the biggest margin in the history of the British Parliament in the modern era. Right now, they would just every working class area in the entire country is voting Reform right now if they were given the opportunity. And why is it? Because they're done with immigration. They're done with open borders. They're done with this nonsense. And here you have people rioting to prevent the deportation of the worst of the worst. You couldn't have made a dumber political move. And just because you're going to find some people love you on Twitter or Blue Sky or wherever else they're organizing these days, the little nerd Redditors, like the ones that have gave all the Ukraine war advice that Ukraine was supposed to have won that war 3 years ago, according to them. This is not popular. This is hated. This is antagonistic. I mean, this is just a disaster. And yet they're going deep. And it affords Trump a perfect opportunity, not only to broadcast to the world he's in control, no more lawlessness, no more out-of-control behavior, no more illegal immigrants endangering people's lives, endangering people's safety, endangering our prosperity in terms of wage competitiveness, right? When you see those people fleeing different scenes at the Home Depots and the rest, well, it's not that those jobs won't get done. It's that now you look under the hood. For the first time since Trump was last president, wages of native-born American workers is rising. Job prospects of native-born American workers is rising. It's foreign workers leaving the workplace, which is good for Trump, good for Trump's coalition, good for MAGA, good for middle America. Why? Because it means, like, there are whole groups of black construction workers who lost jobs and saw their wages completely disappear in LA in particular. There's been labor studies done on it due to mass illegal immigration. You know who gets hurt in East LA, in Hispanic East LA, by mass immigration? Those people that live there, because they're the ones getting replaced in the job market. They're the one getting, and they're getting replaced by criminals. And if anybody thinks they're happy about it, they didn't pay attention to the 20-point swing, 30-point swing, 40-point swing that happened throughout Mexican-American areas of California. I mean, they are so out of touch, so disconnected. That's why you always use the let them eat cake analogy. This is an elite that doesn't understand what's happening in the world, doesn't understand what's happening amongst American voters or voters around the world for that matter. That's why they think it must be some sort of Russian conspiracy for someone to get elected that they don't like, whether in the U.S. or Europe. Not that they are unpopular. If Mayor Bass went into most neighborhoods in L.A. right now, they would lynch her. They would send her out on a rail, as the old saying goes. They would do anything but give her continued political power and congratulate her. And that includes places like Compton, places in South Central LA that are the victims of these latest riots. So this is where she's in a fantasy. The only people that will like her is certain virtue signaling lefties in certain parts of Bel Air, right? I mean that's it. Venice Beach, some of which they made into a shithole. It's back to being it was a shithole. Then it became nice. Now it's back to being a shithole.
Yep.
As someone who lived in LA for a long time, lived in Malibu for a long time, the place has gone to complete crap. Mark Robert still lives there, and he gets to see these fires and smoke and all the rest. It's insane. And that's why ordinary people are begging for Trump to get involved. His intervention will be very popular. His suppression of what they're doing is very popular. This will increase massively the pressure on the Supreme Court to greenlight his power in immigration, because they get to see this is what we witnessed. These are the people we protected. We said there's no predatory incursion when they're waving foreign flags and a foreign leader in Mexico is praising it. See, there's another nitwit.
He's calling on for it. I mean,
yeah, she did. I mean, she basically said for people to get out there that she doesn't want there to be a tax on remittances from the U.S. to Mexico. And I'll give Senator Schmidt credit from Missouri. He borrowed Trump's old line. When everybody was critical of the wall, Trump was like, just got 3 feet higher. And Senator Schmidt was like, well, if you don't like the remittance tax, let's make it 3 times bigger. That's what you got to do. And hopefully the DOJ does something other than Kash Patel run around pretending Epstein killed himself. Dan Bongino going around, proving his uselessness at the moment. Pam Barbie doing her latest Fox News hit. Do something for the love of God. It's that meme from Chris Farley, and he's screaming, please do something, arrest somebody. But this is a great opportunity. These are NGOs paid by government money that were involved in the coordinated conspiracy, seditious conspiracy to obstruct American law. And arguably, you want to see what insurrectionary activity is?
This
LA
is
right now, that's it.
Glendale, LA, this is insurrection. When you refuse to comply with the lawful order from the executive branch, who, by the way, is the extension of you, folks. You are the sovereign in this country. You have one representative in the executive branch who, what is their job? To freaking execute the law, to enforce the law. When you have one person that you elected to do that, and other parts of the government refuse to obey him, they're telling you to go F yourself. Not telling Trump. They're telling you that you are not in charge. As the voter, they don't care what you think. That's why I got to laugh at all these people who say, oh, he's a tyrant. This is literally what a republic looks like. He was elected for this issue and for inflation in the economy, but 100% elected on a policy of mass deportation. This is what people want. The CNN segment just showed that. Harry Enton, whether we get to him or not, we're going to see how Trump's approval over immigration has skyrocketed, even in the garbage polls. Let me show you what happened Sunday in Big Data Poll, which is a poll who's actually polled an election correctly within the last freaking 10 years, unlike that. We had Trump's approval rating and his disapproval rating both roughly just under 50%. It was basically even. He was like 0.6 of a percentage point positive going into Saturday. On Sunday, when I got home from church, and then it really didn't stop. I mean, I could see there was a dramatic difference. This is Sunday when Sunday was done. Okay? Boom. Do you approve or disapprove of the job Donald Trump is doing as president? His strongly disapproval rating fell from just under 40% to 30.3%. Okay, which is incredible because his strongly disapprove has actually been higher than his strongly approve. But now his strongly approve rose from low 20s to almost 30%. It's 29.1%. So they're about even now, Robert. Another 24% somewhat approve. Just so people at home maybe you can't see, that's a combined approval rating of 53.1%. And his somewhat disapproval is only 10.4 for a combined disapproval of only 40.7. He's back. I don't know if this is going to continue, and we're going to find out. He's back in teen approved territory as of Sunday. I was like, holy shit. I mean, there's no other way to put it. I'm like, what did I miss? Did something, and I know what was obviously what's going on in LA. It's the only thing that explains this. It's the images of the burning and the lighting themselves on fire, trying to light cars up like a bunch of idiots, because that's how stupid these people are.
to give to add to that, I mean, I realized that when there was so much social media interest in it. So you have people like Jeremy from Geeks and Gamers has a separate political channel. I think it's called D-Day Cobra. He just
Right.
decided to cover it all day, and the interest was off the charts. And I was like, okay, so there's still unresolved
Some of the
issues.
demographics.
Yeah. There's still unresolved issues related to COVID that people have. There are unresolved issues related to Summer of Love that people have, and building antagonism over the immigration, and that the courts have made worse by trying to throw wrenches in it. The media has made worse. Democratic Party has made worse. That, as you know, this is an area where Trump's got overwhelming support and was a critical aspect to his election. It was, cost of living, get us out of dumb wars, and get our borders under control. And the borders from an emotional, impactful perspective, the last was the most impactful. Because people have just seen their wages go down, their neighborhoods decline, random crime occur. It's like, why did somebody's friend's daughter get assaulted? Well, it's by someone who wasn't even supposed to be legally in the country in the first place.
Yeah.
And it just amplifies the victimhood of that crime psychologically. And that's where they're at. And the Democratic Party, they've been, Roy Texera and others have been hinting at this. Please stop being woke. Please stop celebrating open borders. The old Labor Democrat position was always this way. It was, we want tariffs and we want control of the border. Why do we? Bernie Sanders, Mr. I love Bernie. I love unions. I love. Oh, really? Then why are you so for scabs? Because that's what mass illegal immigration is. It's exactly massive scabs coming in to bust unions, take down wages, hurt jobs. That, especially in the heart of the country. Like, the other thing with this issue is a hot button issue in the industrial Midwest, in the Southwest, and in the inner parts of California, where Trump's side is the big winner, and that's where the swing districts are. The close House districts are in places like California 13. Hopefully Giglio runs and has success. But it's Trumpish momentum in those areas. Parts of Phoenix and Arizona, pretty much all in Nevada, but especially around Las Vegas. Many of these close congressional districts, and then the industrial Midwest, are areas where immigration is a hot button topic, and where Trump is on the right side of that. So if Republicans are smart, Trump is smart, is amplify this. I would amplify it by legal consequences. Newsom is out there saying he's going to interfere with federal tax collection.
I'll play that clip.
Can you imagine? That's a criminal act. Put Newsom under criminal. The guy commits a crime every other day anyway.
He's a criminal. He's a scumbag. Everybody knows it.
He's the OG of Democratic political cartel corruption in the state of California. You can just look at Lennar. You Google Lennar Corporation, billion-dollar fraud, CalPERS, and you're going to find all over the place connections with Newsom and the Democratic San Francisco political cartel that runs that state. Put Karen Bass under investigation. She already lied about what happened with the fires in the Palisades and the Malibu.
Yep.
Now you've got a whole new amplification where she basically greenlit and gave the political permission slip for this violence, and clearly instructed the LAPD to stand down at critical junctures. By the way, the LAPD behaved very unusually. Said the protests were still peaceful when they were burning things all over the city. Put them. And this is federal civil rights violations that are taking place, and they're obstructing, interfering with federal law enforcement. You've got the best tool to go at all these people and put some high-ranking, high-profile people in the rack. Put them under the same criminal investigation they did to Trump. Except the difference is they deserve it. They're the actual criminals.
There's nothing wrong with using the law when it's appropriate. We're not talking about a novel legal theory here like they used against Donald Trump. We're talking about dereliction of duty, sedition. This is sedition. What Glendale just put out in a press release is called sedition. That is way more of an act of insurrection than anything anybody ever did on January 6th, Robert. This is
to be frank, it's less of an attack than South Carolina in 1861.
Yeah.
This is more of a direct attack on U.S. law enforcement and U.S. security and U.S. right to they literally are saying ICE has no right to be in California, no right to be in the city of Los Angeles.
They've declared their independence?
Yeah, exactly. In essence, they've seceded. Is the way they're behaving. You see it with the mayor. Oh, federal government has no role in my city. Really? It's just insanity. They're the ultimate power in your city, sweetheart. So it's a shine of such disrespect. It's right on the perfect political cutting issue for Trump. The filter is perfect. The framing is perfect. Continue to elevate. Continue to use this. Find reasons that this stays in the news. What happened in the LA riots? Don't let go of it by putting some high-profile NGOs, some high-profile individuals, some high-profile politicians in the rack where they belong. Karen Bass belongs in prison, not the mayor's office.
I don't like you brought up before with Cash Patel, Dan Bongino, Pam Bondi, and I know Pam from my Florida days. I am in, and by the way, there are things I'm hearing I don't like, but and if they're true, I'll crucify her like I'd crucify a Democrat if I heard it from them. But we'll see. I'll wait and I'll reserve judgment. But the bottom line is, I think they're like woefully unprepared for this job, and they went in there. Let's be real. If you listen to Cash Patel and you listen to Dan Bongino, especially Dan, I mean Cash a little less so, but Dan, it's like a complete 180. Like this bureau cannot be reformed. I don't know how to bring there is. Please show me, ladies and gentlemen, one bureaucracy. Show me one nation where there were issues of corrupt bureaucracy, where there was a reformation that resulted in somehow a cleaning or a return to the original mission statement of that bureaucracy. Once there is mission creep that comes in and corruption comes in, give me just one example, historical example of a successful reformation of that bureaucracy. You will never be able to find one. The closest thing you may get to is Nikita Khrushchev successfully sabotaging the Soviet bureaucracy, but that was like different. That was perestroika, and that was something that was totally different. That wasn't the bureaucracy not quite listening to the chair. That was just them being hardliners, and he knew that he had to kill their impact, their grip over the Russian economy. So he sabotaged them. That's not the same thing. It's not the same thing.
The closest you'll get is Putin in Russia. But Putin had a lot more open space because things were so much more in flux. You had 10 years of chaos. It was much easier for him to go and purge the bad actors in a chaotic environment. Here, the power is deeply entrenched. And that's why it's got to be carefully, selectively targeted. And just reverse script. Do what Democrats did to Trump. They laid out, it was confession through projection, their own criminal behavior. All the theories they came up with on January 6th. Well, those theories they didn't apply to most of the January 6th defendants. They do apply here. This is insurrectionary behavior. This is organized behavior. This is criminal obstruction. This is the criminal interference. This is criminal conspiracy to interfere. And in my view, it's part of what's been going on for years. And Mayorkas should be. Where did Mayorkas come from? California. So let's put a bunch of these guys in the rack, a bunch of politically unpopular people to begin with nationally, and continue to push this to make the debate California's approach versus the Trump approach. Because America's not going to vote. This is where Peter Thiel was right 5 years ago. He said they're going to put someone like Kamala Harris up to run, and because they think California is popular in the rest of the world when it's not. The California's policies are an example of failure. No better exemplar than the riots in LA right now.
I got to tell you, because I was trying to upload it to show you, but so much of these bad polls that I think they believe, some of them are just so kind of outdated. And when you look at it, it's like they have been, in order to make it make sense to them, they have been repeatedly weighting up these groups that are within their social circles. I'm trying to explain this correctly. We brought up the Central Valley before. It is demonstrably true. It's an undeniable fact that Hispanic men were voting on this issue. So when Barnes says, and all they're doing is weighting down Hispanic men. If you look in their surveys, that's what they're doing in order to stop the impact that it has over the overall poll. But I think they may have convinced themselves that this is real, it's still real, when it's not. It's like they're stuck in this kind of this weird confirmation bias where they're tinkering around the edges of even their strongest data. Because you had David Shore give an interview with the New York Times. He had it all, Robert. He had it all. All of the data showing them, they were going to lose, and they were going to lose bad. And here's why they were going to lose. It's basically a mimic of the work that we did. but they weren't listening to him, even though he's the biggest. For people who don't know his company, he's got to be the biggest Democratic consulting firm out there. I mean, or at least he has conducted the most interviews with polls, but they're in this weird kind of like this. It's a bubble, but it's more than a bubble. And they're just changing the facts as they go to make their world make sense to them. And the second part of that is there's a deception with themselves, and there's a deception that they're doing with you, but they are deceiving themselves as well. And one of the things that pisses me off the most is this repeated attempt to pretend like you care about these people when they knew, or when they learned that these Hispanic men, for instance, were going to be the end of them in this election, and among others, black men, right? When they learned that, they trash talk the hell out of them. And now they're pretending as if they care about these people. And it's such a it's not even a flip-flop. It's not hypocritical. It's just a level of dishonesty that really pisses me off, because they don't give a shit about these people. They don't care at all about the welfare of these people. To them, this is what this is about. Who's going to cut my lawn? Who's going to fold my laundry? And who's going to be counted in the census so I can keep raking in the billions in my district? And who's going to be counted in the census so the Electoral College still gives us the same amount of votes? That's all this is about. It's all it was ever about. If you go back to the old Ted Kennedy, argument that, we need to open up the borders and bring in new people because, look, by God, we can't trust white people. Look at what it did to Jimmy Carter. I mean, this was something they had been doing for years. So now to pretend like they give two shits about these people, when 6 months ago they were hating on them because they couldn't control them anymore and get them to vote the way they wanted them to vote. It just, I don't know, man. It's like a level of, it rises almost to evil, because actually it does, because what comes along with all, it does, of course, rise to the level of evil, because what is coming along with all of this? If you said it before, you ask a drug cartel boss, they celebrated the shit out of NAFTA. They celebrate the shit out of the open borders policy. It's the stupidest thing that the United States could ever have done, but the best thing they could have ever have done for them. It's like opening the floodgates for their product. It's creating an entirely new industry of human trafficking that's going to make them millions and millions of dollars. Then you have Democratic lawyers who pretend to be civil rights activists, who are basically legal pimps, who are getting paid as immigration lawyers to broker these deals of human trafficking. All the while they're posing as civil rights activists. Who cares who gets raped along the way, Robert? I'll remember during the first Trump administration, they found that 13-year-old little girl's body floating in the in the swamps of Florida. I mean, that immigration attorney got paid. He got his money. He bounced quick as hell. Didn't matter if it was dead on delivery, brother. He got his money. This is some evil, just disgusting shit. It really is. And then they have the audacity to pretend that it's about some kind of civil rights issue. They don't care about any of these people. They're tools, the same way that they use stupid, privileged, bored, in desperate need of Jesus, dumb white kids to do this rioting for them when they can't find others to do it, because they use the mentally ill and the perpetually unhappy as tools to do this, to carry out this stuff. And you're right, it's NGOs. They're knee deep in this shit when it comes to all of this. And the Catholic Church, it's one of the reasons why I'm so critical of them. You cannot claim to be a Church of Christ and support human trafficking because your membership is down and nobody's stuffing the damn basket or sitting in the pews. That's all this is about. The Pope isn't some saintly guy who cares about humanity and the human condition. He wants money. He wants more money. He wants more gold. He wants more big buildings. He wants more marble. He wants more paintings. That's all that church has ever been about, Robert. So why do we just pretend? Why do we continue this? Why do we continue this charade? And why don't more people have the balls to call it what it is?
Well, exactly.
What are you afraid of?
And there needs to be an escalated legal consequence to the Soros-oriented
Don't get that
NGOs.
SOB.
To the Catholic. I mean, they tripped on it. the state court judge in Wisconsin, who was they federally correctly prosecuted. There need to be more cases like that. But what was she involved with before she became a woke judge? She was involved in a high-profile Catholic charity supporting illegal immigration in the United States. Yeah, exactly. And so that's where, I mean, we need something symbolic that shakes things up in terms of consequence. That's why there has to be a high-profile politician, high-profile NGO sponsor, a high-profile public figure, like even people connected to the Pope, to send the message, this is done. These people are so accustomed to doing whatever they want. They think there's no accountability, no responsibility at all. They can do these protests without any problem. They can do these riots without any blowback. That especially the organizers won't face any. It was my criticism of Patel and Bongino over the weekend. They kept talking about the people doing it. The people doing it are not the core of the problem. It's the people paying them and organizing them to do it. They will always find some low-rent criminals and mid-wit sociopaths to go out and throw rocks and bricks at people. What you need is to stop the money. You stop the organizing. Notice how it disappeared. Summer of Love just vanished, right? This was never organic. None of this was ever organic. If this was organic, you would have continued, sustained various forms of riots.
Right.
Like you kind of did in the late 1960s and civil rights related movement. They would just have riots in, your old neck of the woods in Newark every other week. Right? You didn't see that here. Why? Because these are being organized. Occupy was organized. It started off authentic, and then it shifted entirely into an organized, paid-for, sponsored event. This is what George Soros does around the world, teaches other people to do it around the world. How to destabilize a society, how to destabilize a government, how to discredit it. You're involved in this is how Ukraine became Ukraine, the Maidan coup. They overthrew the elected powers through staging riots and false flag events. So this is who and what they are about. Lindsey Graham neck deep in that corruption and fraud as Larry Johnson out of this past week. That's where this presents real opportunity. It'll be up to the Trump Justice Department to make the most of it, both from a political perspective and just a matter of good policy. People have to know if they go down this path, they could suffer real consequence. Right now, they're accustomed to only being rewarded and never suffering adverse consequence. And that's what has to change.
Stephen Miller was right. I'm sorry. What he tweeted before is correct. You could use the letter of the law for at least the governor and the mayor to basically say that they are trying to subvert the federal government. And this is, black and white. I don't understand how you could argue anything else. And again, now would be the time to do it because what is it? We're in
the symbolism of
summer of 25, right? It's just not
just arresting Karen Bass. Just arrest Karen Bass after the Palestine fires on top of it. You got all kinds of things to go at her with, the various crimes that she's been complicit in. Other high-ranking LA officials have already been arrested for their wide-ranging fraud and corruption over the last half decade. Get a visually symbolic, significant arrest. Now, the other thing that all of this helps is the combination of Elon losing in his battle with Trump on this, but also what happened with his LA riots. Senator Paul, you got to move on to something else now. Attacking the big, beautiful bill is not going to have any chance of success when the big, beautiful bill, I'll give Trump credit. Nobody's better at branding than Trump. Here we're calling a Congress spending a bunch of money in one big, beautiful bill. But only Trump could convince me to do that. It was like when I once donated to Trump. I'm like, what am I doing? I'm giving money to a billionaire. Why am I giving money to a billionaire? It's like, this guy's
got me, damn it.
Yeah, exactly. But the normie MAGA voter cares a lot more about economic growth and tax cuts, and especially border control and the money to finish the wall, the money to unleash 10,000 new ICE people around the world, around the country, than they do the deficit and the debt. Maybe they should care more about the deficit and debt, to my libertarian and deficit hawk friends out there. But that's not political reality. Political reality is much more important for Trump to get the economy growing and not be responsible for the biggest tax hike in the country, which is what would happen if the bill didn't pass. And most importantly, to secure the border. At this point, that has got to be priority one. We can get to the deficit and the debt down the road. Maybe they never will, and there's legitimate criticism there, and I get all that. But now is not the time to make the big noble stand that Rand Paul is making. because that noble stand just empowers Democrats who are going to lift the debt ceiling anyway, except they'll do it on their terms rather than Trump's terms. And we need the money for the. And so, do you think I'm right that the normie voter out there cares if they had a choice between cutting taxes and cutting the deficit? If they had a choice between increasing dramatically border security versus cutting the deficit, they're going to choose border security and tax cutting over the deficit.
Every day of the week, twice on Sunday. I just tried. We had this debate during my locals book club, by the way, on Sunday, as I was polling. And it's interesting because you know what they'll tell you? What difference does that make if we're not the United States of America anymore? Like, that is what the normal voter will say to you. What difference does it make when we're not America? Because you let an invasion happen and the country's destabilized by a massive influx of people who aren't even American and don't have the, they don't even follow that system of government. They don't support the laws. Like, who cares? Like, and then when it comes to the tax cuts, I'm telling you, mark my words, it doesn't matter that Trump and Republicans passed the Tax Cuts and Jobs Act. If the damn thing sunsets, it will be their fault. End of story. He's the president. They're in control of Congress right now. It doesn't matter. The normal voter doesn't give a shit if you tell them he has a 2-seat majority or if he's got a 20-seat majority. Oh, and by the way, going to that point, the more savvy voters understand that he would have a 20-seat majority if it wasn't all for these illegal immigrants. And then guess what? We would be able to deal with the debt. But because of all of these illegal immigrants being counted in the census, Democrats have seats that they have no business having. Folks, there's a lot of analysis you can actually do out there. We've done our own, all right, in case you missed that. Conservatively, it's 20 seats. It could actually be a lot higher. Some people argue it's closer to 27. So when we're starting to get down to the nitty-gritty, think about what that means. Republicans could have a majority right now coming out off of a good election. They could have a majority right now where they could afford to lose 20 seats and still have a majority. You understand what that means? Like, there are people out there, these principled libertarians or whatever the hell they are. They're out there talking about lowering the deficit, reducing the debt. It's not realistic. Well, and this gets into the other part of the conversation I wanted to have with you, which is that we have to start acknowledging that more than half of the Republican Party in Congress is deeply corrupt. Yeah. They are completely compromised. They will never support it.
They care about what the donor class thinks, what the think tank class thinks, what the media class thinks, because those are the people that, and what the deep state thinks, because those are the people who get them into power. Those are the people who can keep them into power. And if somehow they drop out of official representative power, those are the people that line their pockets afterwards. Lobbying deals and board deals and book deals and movie deals and TV deals and all the rest of the garbage.
Yep, I'm going to get you a contributorship job on this network. I'll make you a lobbyist for the Rand Corporation. I'll do this, I'll do that, and they'll be just fine. So that's why. And also, I have talked to some of them.
They promised Lindsey Graham all the Zelensky lookalike prostitutes that he can get.
Yeah, dude, he can party. I was trying to make it through that, brother. I just couldn't do it. But there's some that I have spoken with that are looking at things like the jobs report that came out last week, and they have some legitimate concerns about, do they want smaller government? Do they want less debt and deficit spending? They do, but they are concerned that our government is so, I don't want to say reliant, but right now, a huge chunk, the federal government is the largest employer in the country. If you do it too quickly, you could cause an economic calamity. I think there's actually a valid argument there. So it does take some time, but then that's simple though, Robert. You go back to the old starve the beast principle and you just little by little, it will go. So the most positive things about the Trump jobs report, there's a couple of them. You mentioned some before. One is that it's the domestic worker who is getting these jobs. That was not true under the first Trump administration. I'm sorry, Trump lovers, but that's a fact. Wage growth is domestic U.S. citizen wage growth. Again, not 100% true under the first Trump administration. Great numbers, but numbers for who is what the question was all about. And then the other one, the other positive, aside from like manufacturing looking like, the forecasts for manufacturing in the next 10 years. If you haven't seen them, you'll be jumping for joy, guys. I mean, this is everything you wanted. But the other most positive part about it is they're private sector manufacturing jobs. It's not like a contract to build another executive building.
Government, I mean, what Biden was doing was keeping everything afloat with government jobs. Most of which were going to people that were not native-born American workers.
That's
Trump
right.
Has like the key. I was curious: could he radically reduce the growth in government employment and actually and just reduce the absolute number of it without that negatively impacting the economy?
That's right.
And what's amazing is he's managed to do it. He's managed to get a lot of, close to 1 million people have left that are illegals that were here. Most of them he didn't have to deport. Just the PR campaign of how he was doing it encouraged enough of them to get out of Dodge. What does that do? It opens up wages here, and we're seeing real wage growth, meaning wage growth above the cost of living for the normie worker, for the native-born American worker. So 100%. We're seeing real job growth for them, real wage growth for them. And here's where your surveys 100%. Would have told people that the official information was off. You highlighted in the surveys done for the last quarterly report, and by the way, people were asking me about including how much can Trump directly confront the courts in the next
that we should ask about. I got to tell you,
I'll be curious. I think it's building. What happened this weekend is only helping that. But one of the things you highlighted was if you dug into the data, people's economic sentiments were actually much rosier than you might get with an initial poll survey.
That's
because
right.
What it was is they were nervous and scared because of the massive media onslaught that said Trump chaotic, Trump tariffs, Trump everything's going to sink, cost of everything is going to go up. Your job. I mean, when I was in Wisconsin, they were still running that narrative. The local media, dairy farms might get wiped out by Trump's tariffs. I mean, it was this constant scaremongering. What your poll showed is if you looked underneath that, for their own personal well-being, they were experiencing positive events. They were saying things are actually good. And that's why I've seen Jeff Snyder, I've seen other people get completely wrong what the ordinary person is thinking because the data they're relying on is the result of a massive government media psyop against Trump. And if you dug into the data, what the real data is showing is people are seeing real progress for the first time in half a decade. And what your survey showed is that people's confidence is actually much better than expected if you can get through all the media hype that was lying about tariffs. And as you pointed out, what happens when these voters see they were lying about tariffs?
Yeah.
There has been no massive spike in prices. There has been no massive layoffs like they were falsely predicting.
Then there it is. As Robert was talking about it, I brought it up, folks. And what he's referring to here was this result that we got, which was an eye opener when this was at that top line right there is the survey that was at the height of the fear, right? And and all of the other surveys that are survey of consumers, even the consumer sentiment, the conference boards, consumer confidence index, they weren't telling you the whole story. And ours is very similar to the consumer confidence index. It's just a little deeper, and we don't use 1985 as a baseline, for our relative value. This showed that right now people were nervous over the future because of what they were being told, even though, Robert, that last what it was being compared against was an all-time high for this survey in every single sub-indicator. So it's like, of course, sometimes the only place you have to go is down because you're already to the moon. You're in the stratosphere with these numbers. So it's like you expect them to come down and come back to reality or not even reality, but closer to the historical average. This last reading, everything was above the historical average. That's number one. No, and Biden, look at the Biden years. So negative, so horrible. But number one, people, you could see the fear in the current business conditions. They were basically saying, yeah, I'm worried about the economy because of what they were hearing. What they thought about in the future was still positive and indicated growth. It was just less than the prior survey because the prior survey was crazy positive. And then it's still way above the national way above the historical average, 54.7%, folks, a lot higher than 46, a lot higher than 41.7. Even when Trump handed Biden the keys to the White House, you guys can see here, it was around 60%. But I mean, that was because of the rebound after COVID. People were feeling good. Like, all right, we're getting back to the economy. We're getting back to our normal economy. But look at expectations for total family income, which is the inflation-related index, 55%. Look at the history of that damn sub-indicator. That's still a strong reading. But what jumped right out was the current employment condition. Like, how is it for you right now? Your job, the situation you're in right now. And they're like, it's freaking great. In fact, it not only improved, but it improved from the all-time high. It was the one sub-indicator that rose, and it set a new record. So it told us immediately that people were only reacting to the fear, and that reaction was not as serious or severe as you would think it might have been, considering how hard they were going at it in the media. So the fear mongering wasn't working like it would have back in 2018 or 2017. It just wasn't working. And it had an impact, but it didn't have the impact that we expected. By the way, it didn't have the impact that we saw back in, where is it? Do I have it this far back? I do. August 2021, in the height of the inflation crisis under Joe Biden. Look at that index, 42.2%. That's it. I mean, people were telling us they couldn't find eggs, and when they could, they couldn't afford them. I mean, it was so bad. There was no tracker on the NBC News website. There were no eggs price tracker. There was no bread price tracker. There's no poultry price tracker. That's all crap that they put up now, because this is what they do under Republican presidents. Dead bodies in the Afghanistan war, dead bodies in the Iraq war. They got trackers for all that crap when it's a Republican president. Obama's elected, they take it down. Trackers for dead bodies for COVID, they got it up for Trump. The minute Biden gets to be president, they remove it, even though more people died under Joe Biden from COVID than from Donald Trump. All right, so like, this is the game they play. Same thing with the damn inflation trackers they put up. People were telling us, despite all of that, that, you know what, at least for me, my job, my position, I'm in the best shape I've been in a while. Why is that, guys? Because this is unlike the Consumer Confidence Index and the Survey of Consumers, this is a registered voter economic confidence index. It means this is the domestic population, people who are getting the jobs in these jobs reports. That was not, and again, not the case under Biden, not the case under Obama, and largely not even the case under the first Trump administration. So they are good. They're doing better than they've been doing for a while, and it shows. I mean, I expected this to plummet that last survey, yeah. Robert. I thought we were in for bad.
And I got tons of people saying it was plummeting from the economic space, and they were following the wrong data. That this wasn't honest crowdsourced information. This was crowd reaction to the mass psyop taking place.
Yep.
That and when you use the metrics that you use, that you've used consistently over time, you discovered that and realized that. And then you could predict, these people are going to be happy when all these warnings of the sky falling don't happen. Yeah. And they haven't happened, and they aren't going to happen. Now, I think Trump does need if the bill doesn't pass in some meaningful form with the tax cuts and the immigration enforcement, that I think would be serious trouble for Trump. My view is everything that's developed over the past week, I think in substantive form, it's going to pass. And that if I was advising a senator or congressman, I would encourage them to vote for it, because it's more disastrous to give Democrats the leverage using the debt ceiling.
They better vote for it, Robert. They better. I mean, every Republican better vote for this, because it's on you. All right. If you're already facing a tough uphill battle, you have the situation in Wisconsin, the House seats, you can count them right now. I mean, you're at least down 3 seats right now, at least, probably more, but you are at least down 3 seats right now. If you have any hope to do one of two things, stem the bleeding or reverse it, there's no like physical rule of the universe that says they can't do better than expected and actually win a few more seats. That's entirely up to them. Like this era of, first term incumbent midterms, like hurting the party in power. We saw with Biden that didn't happen that dramatically. They had a better ground game than Republicans did. They were able to buck the trend of history. Roosevelt got his ass kicked one time. Harry Truman was able to turn that around. It's not written in stone. It's just what normally happens. It's not written in stone. But that was on those parties and what they did. You know what I mean? So if you are going to sit around with your principled thumb up your principled ass and allow the Tax Cuts and Jobs Act to sunset, it's on you. I don't care if you're a congressman or a senator from Kentucky or who the hell you are. this will be on you if Republicans lose 30 seats or 20 seats or 10 seats or whatever, because you didn't do anything. That Republicans are only being given latitude by the American people right now because of number one, Donald Trump, and because Democrats are so bad. The alternative is so bad to them that they don't honestly know what to do. But the answer is not, which to get into this, I wanted to bring this up with you. The answer of having the answer to the problem of having too many anti-MAGA rhino old white guys in the U.S. Senate and U.S. Congress is not to replace them with fake MAGA. All right, so there's anti-MAGA there, and they're in so many seats they want to replace them with fake MAGA. And I'm going to bring one up right now, okay? I'm going to have to start saying names. And I know some of you guys are super excited about this because you don't like the incumbent. Let me be very clear to you right now. Replacing Lindsey Graham with Mark Lynch is a stupid-ass move. Replacing Tom Tillis with another old guy posing with a shotgun. Hold on. I'll get it right now. Hold on. Bear with me, guys. Bear with me. And then like the Gateway pundit thinks this is cool or something. Like you fall for every dumbass who says he's a veteran with a shotgun every time. And then you wonder how you end up with Dan Crenshaw's and Tom Cotton's and all the rest of it. I mean, it's unbelievable. You want to lose the Trump coalition? And I like him. I'm not dogging Mike Flynn. You want to lose the Trump coalition? You follow these stupid ass endorsements. All right. This guy is I'm mirrored. This guy is a sure way to lose the Trump coalition. The answer to replacing old rhinos with new, that are anti-MAGA outwardly, and we all know it now, is not to replace them with fake MAGA old white guys. Okay. The Trump coalition in Nevada, who put together a pretty sizable margin for Donald Trump in an otherwise once upon a time in recent memory blue state, was because it was driven by Hispanic men in Vegas. All right. Donald Trump didn't win Nevada because he won the overwhelming white margin. He actually won a white margin smaller than anything we've seen in recent memory. Him, Mitt Romney, they all did better. He won because he won these new younger voters and they're non-white. And let me just make no mistake. I'm not saying go out and find a Hispanic candidate, or that's not it. You can go find a white candidate. Just find an authentic one. All right? Find an authentic one. Don't find one that, this is bullshit. Packaged and repackaged. Who'd you call for this? Axum? Is that an Axum photograph right there? Did Jeff Rowe take that shit? I'm so sick of they have like 90% of these clowns. And then you wonder why there's Tom Cotton's calling for more money for Ukraine, or like you fall for it every time. All they got to say is I cleaned a toilet bowl in the army for 6 months. You paint him as a hero and he's going to be super MAGA. MAGA is not killing terrorists, ladies and gentlemen. Okay. That is not what MAGA is. MAGA that drew all of these new voters to vote for Donald Trump while Mike Rogers lost isn't because they agree with Mike Rogers or they have some, and I'm a veteran, but I'm saying they don't have this reverence for these institutions that you seem to have. All right. I'm sorry. Mike Flynn is what are you doing, bro? All of these institutions stabbed you in the back. You lost your family home. You were taken in front of a court and embarrassed and humiliated and made to plead guilty. What is wrong with you? This is unbelievable. I'm not saying the guy's a bad guy. I don't even know him. I'm saying I've seen them. They're a dime a dozen, Robert. I've seen them over and over and over and over. How long we've been doing this gig, brother? This is not this is not the way to keep the 35% of black men who voted for you in Texas.
Well,
not the way to do it.
The twofold hurdles,
man.
The twofold obstacles are that the institutional Republicans are not going to recruit populist candidates.
Never.
In fact, they go out of their way to discourage them and deter them. And then the second aspect is the political consulting class, so that even if you have good potential as a candidate, because these candidates are hiring the same corrupt political class out of D.C. To do the polling, to do the marketing, to do the campaigning. It reminds me of Wag the Dog. You know, where Dustin Hoffman's character gets so frustrated
Oh, yeah.
because the people getting credit for the election are the people who said you don't change horses in midstream. Now, I'll give David Mamet credit. That's exactly how stupid most political consultants are. To your point, that they're
That's why they raised
regurgitating
the
something that looks like a
self-funders.
1980s South Carolina Republican Party.
Dude,
That all you got to
South
do is
Carolina's
flash a
total-
military uniform and they'll say, yes, sir. Trump went into South Carolina in 2016 in the primary and said George W. Bush should have been impeached for lying to us about the war.
You're a war criminal.
Remember all the Republican consultants? Oh, you can't do that in South Carolina. It's a big, deeply conservative, blah, blah, blah. It's like, no, that state has changed. The people who used to vote for guys like Hollins, remember Hollins? He actually, when we got into a trade debate with Japan was like, this was 1980s. And which we solved with the Plaza Accords, effectively gutting their currency, which Japan went along with, unfortunately for them. But before that, Japan was like, U.S. doesn't import anything to Japan that's of any value. That's why you have a trade deficit. So Senator Hollins, Democratic senator from South Carolina, went to his office and drew something. And what he put at the top is he said, exported from the U.S., imported to Japan. Faxed it to the Japanese ambassador. It was a picture of the nuclear bomb. I mean, that's who those Democrats are now in the Trump coalition. Okay, they're not yes sir no matter what, folks. There are people who are betrayed often in our military conflict.
Yes.
And so that you need a populace to take these guys out.
They are the hard lesson learned people. Okay, they were on that ship years ago and got burned by it, and now they can't stand it. You don't go out like this clown who's going to run against Tom Tillis, right? There's this one. There's going to be a million of them in that race. And by the way, I may do it, Robert. I'm deadly serious. I mean, I am deadly serious. I have gotten calls from a lot of people, and everyone loves an outsider and a comeback story. Okay, you got to do it. And I care about the people who were taken for granted by the Democratic Party having a home in a better party. The Republican Party, as it is under Lindsey Graham and Tom Tillis, is not that home, but it can be. It can be. It's actually right there. It's not. All we have to do is reach out and touch it. It's right there. You don't need to have a new party like Elon Musk says. This is an opportunity to replace these people. And I'll just say outwardly who I think should be the Republican nominee in South Carolina, Paul Dance. It's a very simple thing. It's like an entirely new state. You just said it. What is Trump's biggest base of support in South Carolina? It's Horry County, where all of these people who are Republicans from New York and New Jersey and across the United States came to live near Myrtle Beach. They don't want an in-the-closet gay man with a Southern twang, all right? They don't want this clown. I'm sorry, Mark. I'm sure you're a nice guy, but you have zero chance to win black votes. Not anywhere, not from Horry to the Piedmont to nowhere. In fact, you're not even getting out the white working class. So you elect Mark Lynch, and in 5 to 10 years, South Carolina will have a Democratic president, because the population of the white vote that's getting more Democratic is going to overwhelm the Republican base in that state if they do not win more non-white votes. Who would you get? This guy who pretends he's going to be a clone of Donald Trump, right? Who's done nothing. He lost an easy race. We're going to promote him to U.S. Senator? Are you kidding me? Or the guy who actually made a plan for Donald Trump to take control of the United States government, which he effectively could not take control of the first time he was a guy who saw the real problem before anybody else, which is that it doesn't matter if you get elected if you cannot take control of the executive branch. And he's young. He's young. Yeah, he's younger. He's got a beautiful family. His wife is like a famous ballerina. I mean, you want to walk in different circles? Don't listen to me. Get somebody who looks like I don't want to insult anybody, but it's very obvious, Robert. I shouldn't have to paint this out for people. And you have dumbass Breitbart out there running stories, trying to prop them up with their fake push poll. It's so cheesy. I'm over it. Well, you know what? When we gave them bios, okay, you mean you pushed them. You pushed them. Because I have numbers right now that show the guy's in single digits against Lindsey Graham. Give me a break, brother. He'll get, if he even can beat Lindsey Graham, which I'm not entirely sure he can. And why are they backing him? Because he'll put $5 million of his own money, and Axum will get richer. Axum and Jeff Rowe will get richer, and they can dupe you all into thinking he's MAGA again. With Boeing so far up his ass by the second year in his tenure, he'll be like Nikki Haley and Lindsey Graham mixed together, only with a white guy, and not one single black vote is coming your way. I mean, man, these are the dumbest people on planet effing Earth. I am so sick of it. It happens every election cycle. And they don't learn. Here's a president who comes and says, well, I can be a businessman too. Trump is a phenom, jackass. You're not going to be Donald Trump, ever. There's one Donald Trump. You're not going to mimic him. You're not going to be like him. You're not going to recreate his magic. I'm a businessman outsider. You're inauthentic, bro. You're inauthentic. They're going to see right through you. You're a faker, bro. You're a faker. End of story. And you'll be out in 6 years anyway, because some black young Democratic nominee is going to put you on your ass. 6 to 10 points. Watch. Mark my words, brother. Mark my words. They go this way. South Carolina have a blue senator in the next election. You watch. I guarantee it. Go ask Mike Garcia whether or not these long-term predictions of mine come true. I told Congressman Garcia exactly when he'd be unemployed. Go ask him how that worked out. Well, not in my neighborhood. I am the textbook quintessential Hispanic Republican candidate. Bro, I'll let you have the floor. I'm so tired of these dumbasses. I really am, Robert. God, taking a break.
So my assumption is that do you agree that the all of these incumbents in these states that have had a massive populist shift in the Republican base, like North Carolina, where a lot of old blue-collar Democrats are now aligning increasingly with the Republican Party. Same in South Carolina, where a lot of the old Ernest Hollings Democrats are now aligned with the Republican Party, and increasingly amongst younger minority millennials. Same in places like Louisiana, where the old Democratic Huey Long type voter is now a Republican primary voter more often than not. And then the same in Texas, where a lot of Mexican-American working class voters that were the historical base of the Democratic Party in that state are increasingly shifting the Republican brand. That means if you ran the right candidate with the right campaign, those are the two big hurdles. But if you did, you could take out Tillis and hold the seat against a Democrat. You could take out Graham and hold the seat against a Democrat. You could take out Cassidy and hold the seat against the Democrat. And take out Corbin and hold the seat against the Democrat. I think that will happen in Texas with Paxton.
Paxton's
he
good.
Is candidate recruitment, number one, and number two, candidate marketing. So, like I've told people that we'll be more involved in 2026 than some past cycles, and the focal point is going to be those three. I'm confident with Paxton. So it's the other three Senate races: South Carolina, Louisiana, and North Carolina. And that those three, maybe Kentucky, depending on what happens in the primary stages, to replace McConnell. But these are places that should have, because of the remake of the Republican primary electorate, very populist representatives in the Senate, like Missouri now has. I mean, Missouri just 10 years ago didn't. Now Missouri's got Hawley and Schmidt, and who are leading the way on populist challenges in the Senate. So that's what Kentucky should be. It should not be McConnell, and I like Paul on a lot of issues, but on key populist issues, he's not aligned on trade, on certain budgetary items, et cetera. There's no consistent populist representative from my home state in Tennessee, kind of mid-level. Now, the congressman who's going to run for governor is really good, but where does he come from? East Tennessee, heart of old populist Appalachia, a Republican brand that was very anti-war, anti-deep state, anti-establishment, so forth. I mean, that's why Andrew Johnson, if any slaveholder wanted a pardon, he made them crawl across the Oval Office to get one, because that's how much he hated the planter class. So I think these are vulnerable, but you're right. The key has got to be totally changing how candidates get recruited, looking for different things than everybody else is looking for. And then second, how they campaign. Like the fact that they're,
Right.
I'm still shocked that, I mean, in Trump world, for the last decade, we've seen the use of social media, the use of memes, the use of alternative mechanisms and methods and modes of communication. And yet all of the generic Republican candidates don't use any of it because they run like it's the 1980s. They run like a campaign, you don't change horses in midstream kind of nonsense. That's who these, and what we got to do is replace them selectively in key races, target 3 or 4 that are manageable rather than doing, maybe a Giglio in the House and a couple of ones in the House to make the point. This is the kind of candidate you run, and this is the kind of campaign you run. You run, the populist voter is going to decide the future of those parties, is going to decide the future of the country. And you need to target them on those issues with a candidate in sync with them, not pretending to be one of them. And last but not least,
That's right.
styles of campaigning that incorporate the modern age, incorporate social media, incorporate coming up with grassroots dramatic stories each day in the way Trump does. Coming up with using things like memes and other alternative and nicknames and some old school techniques with some new school techniques.
Yes.
And that we got to combine all of it. And I mean, like I mentioned that, well, the 1776 Law Center is going to have its inaugural conference mid-August this year. Richard will be there. One of the things we're going to cover,
I can't wait.
aside from certain popular issues, that the cutting edge issues, like one of the people on our board recommended it, why not make 2026 all about 1776? You have a 250th anniversary. So why not incorporate that into the campaign techniques? And that we need a senator, we need a congressman representative of the spirit of 76. Incorporate that into it from a historical narrative shaping, a brand shaping technique. And if this happens, we can have a lot more populist senators, a lot more populist members of the House, which are critical because you point out a majority of them are corrupt. A majority of them are anti-Trump. A majority of them want war overseas. A majority of them want open borders. A majority of them want an open spigot with the budget. Yep. That's what most of them are really about. That's what they're really there for. And we got to replace them if any of the Trump agenda is going to have legislative enforcement and legislative follow through. And I think, like, there was some people who thought Lindsey Graham can't be beat. I was like, Lindsey Graham can absolutely be beat. You just need the right candidate and the right campaign.
To be the right candidate, Robert. Listen,
Paul Danz would be great. I love Danz. Danz would be awesome. He's a no BS guy. Danz came down to Georgia.
I think he's the only one who can do it. I'll be honest with you. This is 100% honesty, man. This isn't biased because I know Paul. This dude, Mark, is going to lose. Lindsey Graham's going to beat Mark Lynch. Okay, he's going to beat him. I'm looking at it right now. He's going to beat him. You need to make the case to the Trump voter and the Republican primary electorate. Look, we all love the boss. He's wrong here. All right. And we're going to have to
Alabama, just like Alabama against Big Luther. You already have the script for how to not worry about Trump's endorsement.
But it has to be the right guy, Robert. It has to be. You need an anti-deep state expert.
Well, yeah, you needed it to be Mo Brooks, not DeRoy there.
Thank you. It needs to be somebody who's got the bona fides, man, and the chops, and because voters see through bullshit. Mark Lynch could pretend to be anti-Ukraine and anti-war and anti-this. They're gonna see right through it. So there's somebody who's been doing it, who's been in the trenches. By the way, again, MAGA's coalition is younger. It's younger. Paul he's younger. He can speak to these people. This guy can walk in places these other guys can't. Look, the only reason why they immediately go to these candidates is, especially number one, when the guy says, I'm going to put $5 million in, all they see is dollar signs. That's contracts for them. Good. He'll have no problem when then I upcharge him 5 to 10 grand for the poll. He'll have no problem when I tell him we need a mailer we don't need. He'll have no problem when I say, we should do another round of text messaging to follow up with that message we just did a day ago. Let me bill you for another 120 grand. They are stupid. And they fall for it every time. And the worst part is all of the messages are lies, and every voter knows it. You can put together all these stupid little vests with the shotgun over your shoulder. It's not going to work. And Lindsey Graham is going to have Trump out there, and they're going to say, I don't know, the old white guy without Trump's endorsement or the old white guy with Trump's endorsement. If I got to pick an old white guy, I'm going with the one who's got Trump's endorsement. Brother, it's so obvious. You need somebody who is like, a Trump loyalist who says, look, I have all the respect in the world for the boss, but we need to make preparations for when we have a party after him. And this has to be a party that represents all of those new people who voted for him but didn't vote for us. And if we don't make that change, we're cooked. And by the way, the deep state blows. I mean, like that's it. That's what they have to do. And there's like, you can't, I'm not picking on all white guys, so don't give me all your stupid boomer messages. All right. You know what I'm saying. Everyone here should be smart enough to know what I'm saying. All right. I don't know how many more examples we got to go through, guys. All right.
I think it's coming in terms of natural candidate recruitment. So that you're seeing amongst younger groups of people that are getting, including like young lawyers, young conservative lawyers, overwhelming populist instinct. That's where Trump finally came out against the Federalist Society, which we've been warning about a long time.
God.
But even the Federalist Society members were like, the younger ones are all on the Trump side of the equation, that they want to use power. And nobody's better at that than people like Paul Dans. Paul Dans understands it fully, gets it completely. And I think the key is going to be figuring out a way to Bernie Sanders the Republican Party. What I mean by that is crowdfunding from the populist base.
And
you're right. Right now, what's happening is the only candidates anybody even considers as a challenger is somebody who can self-fund. The problem is the people who can self-fund generally don't make good candidates.
Exactly. Paul's got to roll the
deck. We need to find ways to short circuit. But we should, in theory, be able to use MAGA to crowdfund effectively. I mean, Trump most of his funding comes from small donors.
People do need to pony up for these guys. They do.
Right. And that's what needs to happen. But they needed a pitch that's effective, right? I mean, they need to see something that, I'm not just wasting my money. I'm not just wasting my time. Right. Yeah, it's plausible. It's viable. It's something like they realize that with Paxton in Texas, because he's already beat the Bush machine multiple times inside the Republican primary for attorney general, and beat them when they tried to impeach him, and beat them when they tried to indict him.
Yeah.
So he's got the bona fides to raise the funds and then to beat Corbyn. Corbyn's done for. Corbyn's the only guy who doesn't know that he's done for. He really should not even run for re-election.
He shouldn't even be running.
Preserve his public image by not getting humiliated by 30 points by Paxton. But Cassidy doesn't know it, but Cassidy, if the right candidate runs, Cassidy's done. The right candidate runs, Graham runs. If Graham loses, if Graham got through dragging Trump into Ukraine on a continued basis, that will be the death knell of Lindsey Graham's future. He is best off if Trump gets us out of Ukraine and ignores him, because that issue is a potentially lethal issue politically for him on a go-forward basis. But Graham represents a South Carolina Republican Party that mostly does not exist anymore. And that's what people don't realize. And you just need the right candidate to run against them. And the same with Tom Tillis in North Carolina. He's a deep state little pit. I mean, he just goes notoriously corrupt in real estate dealing and other areas. He can be taken out if you run a populist, smart populist. You need both. You don't need a populist that's going to say dumb and crazy things that will marginalize them with the court, or have certain things in their past background that others can easily exploit. So as long as you don't have those two, or you get ahead of those, right? If you're Trump, you just, hey, I'm Trump. So even when a scandal breaks, nobody really cares because it was already baked into the cake about Trump. Don't run on like being, I'm a great moral preacher while you're banging your sister. And
I was just going to say, I'd rather defend my sister and everybody else.
Yeah, exactly. You can be careful of those things. But we know how to do that. If we find the right candidates, I think we can find the tools and teach everybody the template. Here's how you recruit a candidate. Here's what you look for. Here's how you help fund that candidate. Here's how you help organize their campaign. Here's how you message. Here's how you market, both in populist substantive terminology, but also people like Huey Long reinvented new mechanisms of communicating with voters. Yeah. He was one of the first people to use broadsheets. He created his own newspaper to get the message out of populist message. And what did he use? He knew that half of his audience was illiterate, so he used a lot of cartoons. He was one of the first people to use cartoons aggressively and effectively. Wrote a song, Every Man a King, just to get his message home, right? Brilliant. All kinds of not only substantive brilliance, but new edge marketing. We have that available with social media, with memes, with we could create a couple of nicknames and images for Lindsey Graham that people forget. James Carville was almost nobody. Paul Begala was almost nobody until they went into Harris Wofford's campaign in 1991 and beat Dick Thornburgh, the attorney general, for the Senate race in Pennsylvania that nobody saw coming. Harris Wofford was down 41 points. They used that. James Carville's still writing checks off that campaign. What did they do? They just ran a populist campaign. Carville realized what Pennsylvania was. He goes, oh, you got Pittsburgh, Philly, and the state of Alabama in between. So it's like, run on state of Alabama, we're going to win. And that's what happened. That's the Lindsey Graham is very beatable. Tom Tillis is very beatable. Bill Cassidy is very beatable. But we need the right candidate, the right campaign, and the right people involved in it to make it a reality. And then we can use it as a template to show everyone else. This is how you do it. Stop hiring Washington insiders. Stop letting Washington insiders handpick your candidates. Stop running conventional organized campaigns like we were 50 years ago. This is not the 1970s. This is not the 1980s. This is not even the 1990s. You've got to run Trump-ish, Trump-esque. Use alternative media, use things like alternative modes, just like you're polling, right? If you were still polling, waiting on landlines to answer, you wouldn't get a poll result for a year. But yet these people are running that way, campaigning that way, organized that way. And so I think there's ways we can use the upcoming Senate campaigns, the right combination of them, a couple of House campaigns, maybe Giglio, some other ones, to show this is how you do it. This is how you raise the funds. This is how you pick the candidate. This is how you campaign. This is how you market substantively and procedurally. Because if that happens, then ordinary everyday people can just use it as a template, replicate it, whether they're running for city council or the United States Senate.
It should be open source. Like WordPress when you want to build a website, Robert. This should not be some secret knowledge, that's tucked away, which, by the way, those who pretend like they have that they're the stewards of aren't even good at it. And it also better happen for the, not for just policy guys and directing what you're trying to do. This party, the Republican Party, is living on a sugar high right now, basically. And when the midterms come, a lot of them are going to get a dose of reality that the realignment, the nature of the realignment is such that you will now have to face the same problem that Democrats had to face, which is how do you motivate a lower propensity electorate to come out and match your opponent who may have fewer voters, but they turn out at higher rates, which means they still can outvote you, right? So this is the problem Democrats had run into for my entire life, by the way. This is new. It's new to everybody. The Republicans always had the higher propensity, educated, older vote locked up. So on midterms, when it was a 35% turnout rate, they did very well. But come a general presidential election, they got their ass kicked. That's what they're facing. Republicans are facing now in reverse. And you're not going to do that running the candidates that they are trying to recruit. And not only try to recruit, but crowd good people out, by trying to do it early and getting them in there. Robert, how many people do you think are going to come out for this guy in North Carolina in Hyde County? A county that is majority Democrat by registration, yet Donald Trump is now 3 times won it with 60% of the vote. How many people do we seriously think are going to come out for this guy in that area? All right.
Well,
I'm not saying
large parts of Tar Heel country, where a lot of black voters were crossover voters in 2024.
Well, black probably don't counties, Robert.
They're probably not looking for the guy that reminds them of an overseer. Just saying.
Oh my God. Like, does he? You could Photoshop out that shotgun for the whip. You know what I'm saying?
Yeah.
You could Photoshop that out for the whip. Get back in field, boy. This is just way too easy. And they will do it. They'll do it.
Yeah, there's just a disconnect. Also, you can't look like the guy that doesn't really hunt, but shoots those little things that go up in the air.
Take a look at that again.
Like
is that
English
an airsoft gun?
It looks like English fox hunting. You know what I mean? Yeah, that's not really hunting.
That's not even a real American's rifle right there. That's right. He looks like he's walking through the Shah with with permission from the Royal Majesty to hunt his quail. What the hell is this?
Well, the other thing is, it's not like these conventional endorsements are really the key. The real key is find a couple of policies that really work that separate you from your opponent, and then communicate it by viral mechanisms, whether that's memes, nicknames, or combination thereof.
The
That's what you
talent
need.
that
And
MAGA has
these people
to do
don't
that.
understand that because they're letting the same captured political class dominate it. But I think there is a great opportunity this coming year. People that think these guys are invulnerable are depending upon the same old people being involved in the opposition. And that may not be what's the case in next year with Lindsey Graham, Tom Tillis, because all of them have betrayed core aspects of the Trump base. Lindsey Graham with trying to drag us into further war in Ukraine with his insane sanctions proposal that no senator with an IQ should vote for, but they likely will because they're owned by the donor class and the deep state. But the Tom Tillis, who's constantly undermining the president, key issues, just like Bill Burr was. An honest Justice Department would already have Bill Burr in prison. He was doing insider trading. He was doing it with his brother. He was doing it with his family. And then the DE is part of now another one of those think tanks sponsored by the deep state to get his check permanently written to him in D.C. All these guys move from North Carolina or other states and really live in D.C. like Adam Schiff does, like even Letitia James does to a degree, and others. But if you look at these are very vulnerable seats. They can be won. They need to be run the right way by the right candidate, by the right campaign. But in terms of, I think for Trump's, I think a big, beautiful bill is going to get through. And then I'm hoping he's waiting for that to get us out of Ukraine, because the only other way he gets sidetracked and the populist coalition falls apart and his approval reverses and goes into a different negative gear, and J.D. Vance even is at risk in 2028, is if he gets dragged into that Ukraine war further. That to me is one of his biggest political risks. Get the big, beautiful bill through because of the importance of tax cuts and economic growth and immigration enforcement. But second, stay out of further getting involved in Ukraine. That morass that is Ukraine. They're unleashing Operation Gladio Part 2 there, clearly. You're going to have terrorism related to Ukraine for the next 20 years because we've armed a bunch of lunatics, a bunch of sociopaths. We've given them the mechanism, method, and means of committing terroristic violence. They couldn't stop bragging about their terroristic violence in Russia, not only against the nuclear accords and nuclear nonproliferation by targeting planes that are only visible because they're trying to comply with nuclear nonproliferation purposes under the START and related treaties. But also, people keep forgetting, they bombed a civilian train that had and derailed it. It had no military purposes whatsoever. And they killed a bunch of women and children. And that's what Russia's currently enraged at, right? These are people we do not want to be in bed with. These are people who blew up Nord Stream. Everybody knows they blew up Nord Stream.
Everybody knows it.
Trump almost admitted it in one of the last press conferences, but then
he should.
Yeah,
I don't know what he's doing.
Exactly. Just say, but Joe Biden did it. Committed one of the worst acts of civilian global terrorism against civilian infrastructure in the world history was the United States government because of Ukraine, because of lunatics like Lindsey Graham. So the other key for Trump: get the big, beautiful bill through. Deal with the court's rogueness and continue to enforce immigration. But last but not least, stay out of stupid wars, whether the war is with Iran, whether the war is in Ukraine, whether it's India and Pakistan, whether it's aspects of China, Taiwan. Stay out of war. You can't run on 4 years on you keeping us out of war and then get us involved in one.
And then do that. Foreign policy can't save you, but it can kill you, man, as a president. And, Herbert Walker Bush had to learn that the hard way. He won a war quick. He thought it was going to get him out of the economic problems that he had, with a tie to his reelection. It did not. It sunk him anyway. So, with the thing you said before too, the talent that MAGA has to do this creatively and in a new way. I want to bring up one example. And I remember you saying, because I remember watching a tweet, you had defended me, right? I was obviously doing this on purpose. So there was this Hispanic model, right, that is a fan. And we had talked, and I'm sure you remember who it is. And, we had talked, and I talked to her about doing a MAGA calendar, right? And she was like, sure, if you help me push it, right? You remember this? It's like, what, 2 years ago? Something like that, right? 3 years ago, right? This girl did it, and she did it good, boy. But I had all these principled conservatives going, how dare you exploit this woman? She was not exploited. She was having the time of her life. All right. My wife was perfectly fine with it. Oh, it was fine. What do you think I was doing, dumbasses? All right. Those Hispanic men in Nevada want to look at that calendar. Okay.
Yeah.
Those Hispanic men in South Florida want to look at that calendar. I wasn't there is more creative ways to do it than the cookie cutter way. Don't tell me that that stuff doesn't have an impact. It absolutely does. By the way, Brianna, thank you. You were wonderful. Wonderful.
Yeah,
And,
yeah,
and do you remember that? Do you remember those
find
tweets?
new creative modes and methods of communication and articulation of
course.
messaging, not only in the substance of this messaging, but in the style of it's delivered. And there's all these opportunities that have been created by the
I
podcasting
mind
explosion.
you, if you open that, I'm going to let you look at this calendar. Can I ask you a few questions first? Right?
Yeah, exactly.
That's what we did. Are you kidding me? They were like, oh, hell yeah, bro. What do you need?
Yeah, exactly. Well, I mean, there's all kinds of ways to do that, to unleash the new populist energy and zeitgeist.
Jeez.
And I think the key is, as long as Trump can keep things aligned, get the big beautiful bill through, continue to enforce, and we'll know this week whether the Supreme Court. Now, my view is, if the Supreme Court refuses to do anything about fixing the rogue courts underneath it, either in nationwide injunctions, birthright citizenship, immigration enforcement, availability.
What do you think? What's your gut?
I think he's got to do what Andrew Jackson, Abraham Lincoln, Thomas Jefferson, and FDR did before him, which is directly confront them in some meaningful manner. I would choose some of these high-profile criminal immigration cases, where like a court's ordering you have to babysit them and can't return them to South Sudan. I would return them to South Sudan and say, now what? So I think you have to. I think the Supreme Court's going to capitulate substantially this week. I think they're going to give them a lot more leeway and take away a lot of lower courts' leeway. But if they don't, I think he's got no choice but to confront them. And now he's got the LA riots as justification, and just pick the right case to do it, the right example to do it, the right framework to do it. Say, like the South Sudan one's probably a good one, because you got 4 or 5 hardcore criminals that have long, extensive criminal records, long, extensive deportation records, never legally here, connected potentially to various terror groups around the world. And right now we're being required to babysit them nonstop at the order of a federal court and not return them to their country that they belong in. And I would, use an example like that and see if they're willing to try to hold the U.S. administration in contempt. And who's going to enforce it? I mean, the U.S. Marshals are under Trump's legal control.
Yeah.
So Trump would tell those marshals, you don't arrest anybody. You don't seize anything, period.
Let's talk about that actually real quick before we because I'll forget if I don't bring it up now. We have to figure out a way to ask in a poll how far Americans are willing to go when it comes to these judges. We have asked a lot about the judicial system and judges. And I mean, I can tell you, we both know. And folks, we can both tell you, they hate judges. The American public effing hates judges. They think they're better than everybody else, and that they know better than everybody, that they're way out of line. When you ask people which kind of a judge you support or what do you think the proper role is of a judge, we've asked different ways, and you give them the textbook definition of judicial activism or a textualist, but judicial activism gets the support of like 20% of this country. Everybody else thinks that the judicial branch should have a limited role and it should be relegated to simple interpretation, and that like when they elect a president to do something, he should be given a lot of leeway to execute the agenda the American public wants. So when these judges issue these outrageous orders, like how far are Americans willing to go, to ignore them? Should he ignore judges when they give? And I mean it has to be worded right, because the fact of the matter is, like a mainstream pollster will do this all wrong, Robert.
Right,
These are not legitimate rulings.
Do you think Donald Trump should disobey the courts and create an authoritarian government in America?
Yeah.
That'll be the phrase. Whereas an honest phraseology would be, Trump says that he needs to deport this person because of safety of the country. Courts say he can't deport him until they agree with it, and he has to keep him in the United States. Do you side with President Trump deporting them anyway, right? That would be the kind of close to proper framing. The Trump side, the anti-Trump side, give it to them. I think that
I like that.
After everything that's happened, the LA riots and some of these high-profile cases, I think Trump would now get majority support for his position in that instance. But what do you think?
I like that a lot. And I think that's the appropriate way to do it because you have to give people the proper context, but you can't give it to them from one side point of view.
Right.
Either side. It has to be given both. It kind of like our voir dire research, where it's like, this is what the prosecution is going to argue. This is what the defense is going to argue. What do you think?
Exactly.
I mean, it has to be that plain.
And I think that number would have been 35% for Trump at the beginning of his term. I think now it may be getting to the point where it's a majority support.
Yeah. We got to do that. We got to throw that on the next poll sooner rather than later because that is, it's prescient, number one. Number two, this is going to go on. This is going to continue. This is only one instance. It'll happen again and again.
People forget historically, Thomas Jefferson impeached a justice of the Supreme Court to pay him back for being political. Andrew Jackson told the Supreme Court, you've issued your order, now you go enforce it.
Yeah.
Abraham Lincoln suspended the writ of habeas. Supreme Court said you can't do it until Congress agrees with you.
He said, watch me.
Lincoln said, don't care. I'm still suspending the writ of habeas. Good luck trying to change that. FDR said, hey, I think you guys are getting a little old. Maybe you need 9 more justices up there. And immediately the 4 horsemen held on, but the rest capitulated. They're like, we're sorry. Oops. So the idea this has never been done in American history is completely requires ignorance of American history.
Yeah.
What we're recommending for Trump is less aggressive than what FDR did, Abraham Lincoln did, Andrew Jackson did, and Thomas Jefferson did. Though honestly, I wouldn't mind if he impeached a couple of Supreme Court justices. I think some of them got it coming by some of their rogue rulings and wayward activities. And contrary to what Chief Justice Roberts said, our core precedent said that you can impeach a judge solely for politically weaponizing his office in ways that violated his oath. Right? It was based solely on judicial decisions. Like Robert's like, you could only impeach someone for conduct outside of the courtroom. No, that's never been the case, and that's not been American precedent.
It wasn't even.
Now, I get why Roberts might be concerned with that, given that his wife has been out soliciting legal fee donations on the grounds of wink, wink, maybe it'll influence the Supreme Court of the United States. There's a guy, and it's like everybody's wondering, like Mangino's like, we're going to get to the bottom of the Supreme Court leak. Everybody knows who did the Supreme Court leak. It was part of Chief Justice Roberts' staff. Everybody knew that from day one. That's why Roberts said, hey, don't worry, I'll take over the investigation. We don't need any independent inquiry that could expose him. But Trump's got to escalate, I think, against the courts because he's got no choice. They're trying to handicap his ability to do his job, dictating personnel choices, dictating where money is spent and how it's spent, who it's spent, dictating foreign policy now, dictating foreign diplomacy now. I mean, it's insane. He's got no choice but to put them in their place if the Supreme Court doesn't. Supreme Court will have a great chance
in midair. Yeah. Robert, turn a plane around in midair, like
some of the most dangerous criminals in the world. You got to bring Con Air back to the U.S. or have them babysit these guys for months. Imagine somebody broke into your home and then they said you can't remove that person. You can't order that person removed. You got to put them up in your house. You've got to feed them. You've got to clothe them. You've got to take care of them until we decide whether or not they have a right to be in your house or not.
That's exactly what's being. It is that though. That's an appropriate analogy. It's like giving a burglar or an intruder squatter rights. Like that's what's going on. It's like mass squatter rights. And to hell with your right to ownership of your property or privacy or, not to be trespassed upon. To hell with that. And in this case, it's arguably even more severe. The hell with your right to influence your government, because that's what this comes down to. Again, nobody voted for an invasion. Nobody voted to have an entire state and states, multiple states, politically altered in perpetuity, without without giving, they didn't give their consent for that. And by the way, it happens to be a huge state, which has a massive impact on the outcome of elections and what direction the government, forget about who's going to control the government. Forget about it. They'll then decide how to steer government policy. And this is one of the most basic elements to a social contract. This is a fun, what is the point of a social contract? If the government, which is asking you to give up some of your rights in order for them to provide security and to give you the basic rights that you would expect of a citizen, right? I mean, our social contract is different. It's unique because, of course, ours aren't given by the government. They're recognized by the government. And they're basically saying, we don't recognize that anymore. Well, if that's the case, then you. What are we doing here? Why are we paying taxes? Why are we doing any of this? Like, you have completely breached your side of the contract. Why would you expect me to uphold mine? I mean, and by the way, the tax thing, man, I'm starting to become like Wesley Snipes level hatred of the IRS. I just look all the money they waste, and what they do with it. They're basically directing money to these NGOs who support the invasion, or they're directing money to the media outlets who are owned by pharma, and they're there to destroy you or opposition voices, and they're there to push these narratives and make it like this is a good thing. It's a civil rights movement. It's not, about being invaded. I mean, I just feel like the whole thing is broken. And if you're not allowed to vote and decide, you know what, I want to course correct. All right, we got out of control. But now I want to course correct, as the country clearly did, Robert. And I mean, in some of these states, Texas, biggest margin we've seen in a very long time. He turned deep red some of those southern, very Hispanic counties, not red, deep red. Arizona, 6 points, brother. It wasn't, again, because of the white Republican who came back to Donald Trump. It was because he won Hispanics at such a huge level, and other non-whites. Nevada, we've been through this. Even Michigan.
Florida. I mean,
Florida
is no longer a competitive state.
Not even competitive anymore.
Recognize is like these upcoming battles are critical for Democrats because they got to have their people in power in 2030 in order to keep the census going. Otherwise, they lose. The electoral college dramatically shifts.
This is it for them,
and then they're done.
This is the hill to
die. Already an institutional disadvantage in the Senate. They're at an institutional disadvantage with the existing electoral college. With the new electoral college that's coming, they're going to be wiped out for at least a decade.
Yeah,
and then they're wiped out in the House.
Folks, what Robert's trying to tell you is because right now we have been living under a handicapped system. All right. And that's what we've been dealing with. If Democrats fail to stop this, it will go to what was originally intended and a fair level system. And they would have to actually win elections vis-a-vis making an argument. And that's not, nobody agrees with their policy that within the actual VEP, the voting eligible population, and if they're given the correct amount of electoral college votes, if they're giving the correct amount of congressional districts, Robert, they have no chance to win a majority in the House of Representatives. It would have to be a Bush second term kind of midterm environment for, crisis overseas, economic calamity at home. It would have to be that kind of an environment for them to flip districts they would have no business flipping otherwise. And then with the presidential situation with the presidential election, they're going to lose all of their supposedly on lock, states. They're going to lose so many electoral college votes. They'd have to win the Rust Belt and the Sun Belt to be elected president. I mean, guys, they're wiped out. It's a problem for at least 10 years, like Barnes said. I mean, at least. But
that's why they're fighting like mad now.
But
I think if Trump continues to double down on immigration and the DOJ does something useful in that capacity in terms of some of the rogue NGOs and high-profile political actors, gets his big, beautiful bill with the core parts of it through, and gets us out of the Ukrainian conflict, then I think he's set up things very good for the rest of his term and set things up to mitigate. And then it's going to be up to normies, ordinary Republican voters, to make sure they get the best nominees and the best campaigning in 2026. Because if Trump does that and you got good populist campaigns, then they could even hold the House potentially because of how things have shifted. Like normally when you have a surplus of seats because of coattails. None of that happened because of the weird anomalies of what's happened the last couple of cycles in the House. So there isn't even Cook Political Report basically says up to 20 toss-up seats. and that right now Democrats need to win a majority of those toss-up seats to win the House. So and look at where these toss-up seats are. They're in populous country, middle America, and middle America extended, middle America with a little bit of an accent in parts of Texas, in Arizona, in Nevada, in the Central Valley of California. And those Hispanic working class men are going to decide whether Republicans keep the House or not. In the Southwest, and then in the industrial Midwest, it's it's union guys. It's the kind of guys that celebrate Trump's tariffs, the kind of guys who are principally profiting so far from Trump's economy and his economic improvements. They would profit even further from more improvements because the economists are like, oh, lower immigration is going to reduce growth. More importantly, lower immigration increases growth for real Americans. That's what Trump is focused on: real delivery of real, not some global GDP number, but what's your bank account? Is the wages higher than the cost of living? Which he's already done great on the cost of living, getting energy costs, the main input costs way down, which, by the way, he needs Russia for it. The one thing that could blow all this up is if we get trapped in a war in Ukraine, all of a sudden we don't have a key peace partner to get Iran done. All of a sudden that becomes a second battleground with Israel and Iran and U.S. and Russia and Europe involved in Ukraine, which could then spill over to China, Taiwan, because China could say, you got two wars you're dealing with. Good luck trying to deal with Taiwan at the same time. Our domestic economy is struggling. So as Xi's last act before he's pushed out, and there's lots of rumors that he's being pushed out as we speak in China, he goes and grabs Taiwan as the last of his legacy. And how are you going to? So all of a sudden you got three wars you got to deal with, right? That's what happens if we don't stay out of Ukraine and don't get out of Ukraine. Is it has this cascading set of effects. It also impacts energy costs. If Lindsey Graham's loser Lindsey's proposal for bone-crushing sanctions got through, it's a 500%, five-fold increase in tariffs. And what it's designed to do, drive up the price of oil and gas. The one thing Trump has succeeded doing in his first term suddenly reversed, and all of a sudden the cost of living spikes and skyrockets again. So that's where Ukraine ends up being critical as the last element, the last pillar to Trump being able to deliver to his constituency and giving us a good environment to run on and for populist perspective in 2026. Blow up Ukraine, it blows up Trump, blows up Vance, blows up Republicans, blows back. And then all of a sudden, if Democrats do get power, then they can change the census. Then in 2030, they don't get killed like they're currently on pace for. That's why what Trump does with Ukraine is as important as anything else he does over the next 6 months, because it will determine and dictate the sustainability of his agenda, given that I think Big Beautiful Bill is going to pass. And his immigration popularity is very strong. And the courts are either going to capitulate or he's going to confront them in a way that makes him more popular rather than less.
Which all the more reason to folks to, in order for Republicans or Trump to deliver on that agenda for for his coalition, for his new coalition, all the more reason why Republicans have got, and when I say Republicans, I mean the voters, have got to address this problem that they have within their party of the Lindsey Grahams, of the Tom Tillises, of the Bill Cassidys. These are people, Robert, who they oppose tariffs, all right, to help the American worker and the American domestic economy and manufacturing base. They oppose tariffs, but they have absolutely zero problem slapping sanctions so they can get a war.
Yeah, at fivefold or tenfold the rate of the tariffs. I mean, there's such frauds. The same senators that voted against Trump's tariffs are saying they back tariffs 5 times, 10 times higher against other countries in order to jack up energy costs for real. Right? There's ways in which Trump's tariffs were going to have to be eaten by the country exporting the product and would not lead to massive inflation in the U.S. Because his China tariffs first time around also didn't lead to that. But the one area where you will get price hikes is if you drive up energy costs. Yeah. That's the quickest, easiest way to get price hikes because those costs are transferable and always have been. It's a different dynamic.
With the most negative consequences on the consumer immediately.
Trump's back in 1975, right? He's back with stagflation and global war. That didn't work out well for anybody that was affiliated with or associated with that politically. So as long as Trump, and I think people would ask why Trump endorsed Lindsey Graham. Lindsey's used his leverage a lot better than Rand Paul. I mean, what Lindsey said is if you want my vote on nominees, you want my vote on the budget, you have to you can't withdraw from Ukraine. That's clear. That's what he said, and he did. Now, he went too far, went over on his money laundering trip to bang all the various prostitutes he was going to meet over there, and they're not of the women variety. There's Zelensky lookalikes.
Just come out, bro. Just come out. All right.
Yeah, exactly. I mean,
Everybody
he's
knows.
the deep state's favorite bottom boy in more ways than one. And so that's who loser Lindsay is. And so if we could but Trump can reverse course on that, and even the endorsement doesn't matter. Ask Big Luther whether the endorsement by itself is dispositive. The Trump's endorsement is contingent. Once he no longer needs Lindsey Graham, you're not going to see him go to bat for Lindsey Graham, right? It's only while he needs him. Once the big beautiful bill is through and done, I think you're going to see Trump get us out of Ukraine. He's already planting the seeds for it. They're just these people fighting forever. I can't solve it. I'm out of here. Right? That's the solution. J.D. Vance has already recommended that solution. The folks over at the Duran have recommended that solution.
Yeah.
So it's the practical thing for to do is to get out. I think the timing is based on getting the big beautiful bill through, because that's how Lindsey, unlike Rand Paul could have used as leverage to get us out of Ukraine rather than on a few Fox News, CNBC news hits about how he's the only true deficit hawk in the Congress. Who cares? That's going to gain you nothing in terms of actual policy. Whereas if he would have leveraged his vote to get us out of Ukraine, that would have given Trump more leverage to get us out of Ukraine earlier. Whereas Lindsey's used as leverage well. That's how the Senate does it. And Graham knows even if he gets defeated, they'll write him a big fat check and he'll get to go party with all the Zelensky lookalikes he wants until time is over. And so that is the nature of, as long as Trump can get us out of Ukraine as the last, get the big beautiful bill through, stand strong on immigration against the courts, finish that third pillar of getting us out of Ukraine, and then it has the cascading effect. It keeps prices low. It allows nuclear non-proliferation to expand because Russia can negotiate with Iran to get Iran to give up its nuclear capacity. Right? Iran's current only excuse to not reduce it is they don't trust the third-party custodian that they would have that material in case the West breaks its rules, because we went and whacked Gaddafi after he gave up his nuclear weapons program. That creates a horrible policy precedent that has put us back with nuclear non-proliferation, which has been a Trump obsession for a while. And now the best way to if you get Russia on board with energy costs and you get Russia on board with nuclear non-proliferation with Iran, all of a sudden, not only do you not get further entrenched in a dumb war in Ukraine, you also keep us out of a war in the Middle East. You keep us out of a potential China-Taiwan conflict that they utilize when they see us involved in multiple wars around the world. So you can that's where everything for global peace comes down to how Trump handles Ukraine, because of its cascading knock-on effects beyond Ukraine. And then, really investigate Ukraine, it's the biggest money laundering deep state grift in the world. It's where the bioweapons labs were developed. It's where most human trafficking around the world disproportionately occurs. And it's where the deep state gets all its money. You go to one of those Ukrainian military garages, and what do you see? Rolls Royce, Lamborghini, Ferrari. That's what they've been doing with your money, everybody. So it saves money, it stores peace, keeps the cost of living down, creates critical allies globally. And that's, I think, the perfect trifecta for Trump. And he's on pace to do it if he just pulls the trigger and delivers.
Let me just say real quick, if we, the Robert's going to tell you where you find, more of what his stuff, what he does. If you right now, because I saw the comment on Rumble, or is it Rumble or Getter? We're only right now doing that poll on that schedule because we're just trying not to overburden you guys. It's not that we're not trying to do, I would poll every damn month or every 2 weeks. We're trying not to overburden you guys with it. But if it's up there and it says fall, but the poll's funded before the fall, obviously we'll run it. So definitely, I would definitely run another one sooner. But that's honestly up to you guys. I just don't want to put you guys on that kind of a schedule, what you're talking about, because it's a lot of money. It's a lot of money. It's a lot of money to ask of people, especially since, it is what it is right now. Robert and I were just talking about the need for people to crowdfund and give to these candidates. Don't let these self-funders grab nominations that don't deserve it. So there's other places to put your money, but don't get me wrong. Sure, we want you to fund it. Obviously. That's a no-brainer. Come on, buddy. Come on. What kind of question is that? But yeah, we would run it. The link's in the description if you want to go ahead and contribute to it and help us get, every month, every 2 months, whatever it is. But right now I put it on that schedule for that. But yeah, Robert, tell people where they can follow you. It's right up on the screen right there, but what you got going on. And by the way, You mentioned the Duran before. If people aren't watching that show, they need to be watching that show. It's on YouTube. It's on Locals. Actually, go to Locals and go check out the Durant with the T. And it's cool. Really cool. Those two guys. Yeah. Some people are YouTubers. Some people have content. You know what I mean?
Oh, yeah, exactly. The Duran does great work. You can find them on YouTube, Rumble, Locals, everywhere else. They give you sort of a realpolitik perspective on what's going on in the globe. And their advice to President Trump has been to get out of Ukraine because it's a trap at multiple levels. And it always has been. And I think I'm hoping he's just waiting for the big, beautiful bill's passage to get out and just avoid further entanglement in the interim. Because of all the knock-on effects it has for global peace and global prosperity.
Robert, waiting to happen.
Exactly, in the U.S. So and then we'll get around to bottom boy Lindsey when time comes in 2026 primary. But if you want to get all the various, we put up political betting markets and other sports betting and other betting opportunities in the election. I'm going to add some stock trading tips as well as we go along. That's all at sportspicks.locals.com. For all the political and legal commentary, that's at Viva Barnes Law. .locals.com. And remember, support the public polling project done by Richard at Big Data. That's where you get honest information that dispelled the lies. Look what happened last time. You put out the polls showing that the media is doing a psyop, and all of a sudden, all the media polls have to reverse over the next 2 weeks, admitting what they did implicitly was a psyop. That
Absolutely.
The 1776 Law Center polling surveying done in the summer of 2024 showed the vitality of a potential MAGA-MAHA coalition. We were the first ones to discuss it, first ones to broach it, first ones to get in the Trump world. Trump embraces it. What happens? It happens. And when that MAGA coalition forms, it forms the popular vote majority for President Trump. It forms the Electoral College certification. It helps with the House and the Senate for down ballot because of who turned out and how they voted down ballot. And why? Because they get honest data they weren't getting from anybody else, including their own pollsters, quite frankly. So if you want to know whether you want an honest poll, because the fake polls are coming once there's confrontation with Trump in the courts. Let's say they run in California, and California says the National Guard has to withdraw and can't secure this piece of L.A. Then Trump says, no, we're keeping them there. We're keeping the peace. The judge can go down there and be a cop if he wants to, but that's the way we're going to handle it. So let's say something like that develops. They're going to do fake polling that said, do you want Trump to be a dictator? Do you want Trump to be, this is deeply unpopular. Oh, Trump's going to, So you need honest data out there to show, no, in fact, the American people are more with the president than road courts. And that's what you can do by supporting the Public Polling Project. It's the Public Polling Project, so it's public who's supporting it. Public is who backs it and funds it. And you don't have some secret sugar daddy corporate oligarch donor that's trying to create fake news and information behind it. It's your information, your data by the most accurate, honest pollster for more than a decade. So continue to support that so we can get honest intel and honest information to key decision makers who rely on this more so than anybody else that's in the polling space because of the history of above average accuracy.
And Robert, the Four Freedoms poll, that was it wasn't even discovering it. I really think, answered the question that we had run all these other polls in the Rust Belt, and Michigan, he was performing like slightly stronger than he was in Wisconsin. And we were wondering, Wisconsin's always tricky to poll. Is this really going to happen? It did happen. And I'm telling you, it was that poll explained why, because that coalition was bigger. That combined coalition was bigger in Michigan. So once you brought those Kennedy voters over and those people, that was it. That's folks, we told you that's a few points right there. That's a few points. So that's the difference between a squeaker, 1 point squeaker in, Wisconsin, a little bit less, or, a kind of comfortable 2 point margin. That was the ball game. That was the difference. And we were able to identify that. That was, it was just massive impact. That was probably the biggest impact poll all cycle, honestly, out of one that anybody did. It was the one that showed that this marriage between these groups is just she can't beat it. Not even with ballot chasing, with anything. And you damn well know they still pulled their shit. He just won.
Exactly. He won outside the margin of fraud.
He won outside the margin of fraud.
Because they got accurate data, honest data from people they trust. And that was only possible because ordinary people made it possible.
That's
right.
It's
also replicating a template, trying to create a template of crowdsourcing political influence and public influence in transparent and open ways, as well as the value of the information itself. It's the value of the model that it provides. So continue to support the Big Data public polling project to continue to get accurate, honest information to the decision makers that need it.
Go check out Barnes on Locals, folks. Thanks as always,
everybody.
brother. We'll do it again soon. All right. I'll talk to you in a little bit, brother. Thanks for watching, guys. Don't forget tomorrow, but always Wednesdays is Inside the Numbers, Fridays Inside the Numbers. We'll tell you when the next What Are the Odds are. Thanks for watching as always. Laura's not here, so I'll have to do it for her. Give a nice big deuces. Have a great rest of the day. It's hot as hell. Go find a pool somewhere. Chill. Get some sun. Don't work as hard as me. Go relax and enjoy your time. Thanks for watching. All right. Off the show. I got work to do off the show. Huh? Oh, sorry. Hot mic. Later, guys.